Chapter 241. Even normal is a lie. 1. Fry Starlight's POV. Wearing the official uniform of the temple's elite class, I made my way toward the classroom. Everything felt like a dream, as if I'd stepped a full year back in time to when I first set foot in this place. But anyone could tell that the Fry who walked these halls now was no longer the same as the Fry from back then. Not by a long shot. The whispers around me were living proof of that. That's him. The one who won the Victoriad. The man who defeated the hero. Don't make eye contact. He's a criminal. I heard he just got out of Alcatraz. Only days ago. Terrifying. Thanks to my enhanced senses, I could hear every word with painful clarity. They repeated my damned name so often I almost wanted to change it. Fry, 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 Fry. I swear, if one more person says it, Fry. Haha, you're back. Look at you. Slap. Danzo slammed his palm on my back. Just a slap, but it sent me 2 meters forward before I caught myself. It's been a while, Danzo. It really has. So how was Alcatraz? Is it really the hell everyone says it is? It had been some time since I last saw him, but I felt an odd sense of emptiness at how easily he glossed over the fact that I was a criminal who just left the most notorious prison in the Empire. Instead, he treated it like I just returned from a vacation. That kind of backwards thinking. I guess it's why I never minded him too much. Adjusting my posture, I replied. Other than the time distortion, it was pretty normal. Really? I heard people go insane in there. Do I look insane to you? You looked insane before you went in. Haha. Slap. He hit me again as we walked toward the classroom, chatting the whole way. That's good for you, Fry. How exactly is any of this crap good for me? You've got a criminal record now. That probably makes you look tougher. Maybe I should finally drop the whole pretty boy label. That again. I'd really appreciate that. Your face isn't helping. Even with the dark circles under your eyes, you still look like the damn princess. Somehow the conversation swerved toward her now, which made me ask instinctively. The princess. Seeing I didn't catch his meaning, Danzo clarified. Oh right, you've only just returned. It's not a big deal, really. The princess has been spacing out a lot lately. She's got worse bags under her eyes than you. He paused for a moment before adding. Seeing her like that reminded me of you, somehow. Those last words made me wonder, how exactly had others seen me? I hadn't given it much thought over the past 2 years. I never really cared about what people thought of me. But from what Danzo said, something was definitely going on with Sansa. Everyone's got their own struggles, I murmured. Danzo nodded. You're right. The princess, thinking about Sansa, inevitably brought Aegon into the picture. I wondered what he was scheming now, especially since I'd grown into something far bigger than he probably expected. Our relationship had become unclear, but one thing was certain. He was my enemy, and I fully intended to settle things with him very soon. After all, I now had the one card that would let me play his game on my terms. While lost in my train of thought, we eventually arrived at the classroom. Most of the others from Class B were already there. The only new face was Demon Valyrian, who apparently preferred attending our sessions over those in Class A. We arrived on time, so I didn't get the chance to talk to anyone else except Danzo. Before heading to his seat, he turned to me with a grin. Better watch your back, Fry. I'm coming for that top rank. When I looked at his card, I noticed he now held the 4th rank in the class. Why don't you challenge the 2nd and 3rd first? Then come bother me. I sighed and leaned back against the desk at the back of the room. Before the professor arrived, I quickly scanned the students in the room. Ragna, Cerys, and the princess. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes not unlike mine. Hawkeye's noticed something else, an odd shift in her golden hair. It had grown slightly darker. As I stared at her, she noticed and met my gaze. I waved, and she returned it, though her expression didn't change at all. Just seeing her again made me recall the power she once displayed. Somehow, she possessed a strength normally reserved for demons. Could easily be mistaken for the supreme shadow trait, But I knew better. There was something else. What exactly was she hiding? I pondered that, but was interrupted by the creak of the door and the arrival of a face that instantly surprised me. That violet hair. She walked in wearing a long black coat, her expression grim, a stark contrast to the image I once had of her. Sophia. I muttered her name without realizing it. Apparently, she heard me, because her eyes landed on me right away. Oh, Fry Starlight. So, you've finally returned. I nodded at her words. Yeah. Good. Now your class can finally resume proper training. She was brief and to the point, starting the lesson without delay. Given the Empire's current state, temple lessons had become almost entirely practical. We rarely sat for theory anymore. Sophia had us sparring in pairs, only stepping in to offer occasional pointers. She was especially effective with the wave controllers, her specialty. But when it came to me, she'd simply nod and move on. It seemed there was nothing she could teach me now. To be honest, I hadn't expected her return. After the infiltration incident, Sophia was supposed to leave the temple for good. Back then, she lost consciousness when Aegon appeared and defeated Kai Luke. She never witnessed the massacre that followed. Eventually, she was meant to investigate, digging until she discovered that the true culprit was the prince himself. She'd turn against him and seek revenge, only to be manipulated and discarded in the end. That was her tragic fate. And yet, here we were. The future had shifted once again, and Sophia had returned as our instructor. I couldn't help but feel a bit curious. What kind of future awaited her now? Chapter 242. Even normal is a lie too. Fry Starlight POV. Sophia's class ended. After seeing her again, I figured I wouldn't run into any other familiar faces for a while. As always, I was wrong. An odd old man with white hair and a sharp black suit appeared, barking out as he entered. Don't touch anything with your filthy hands. Get to the damn training hall and wait for me. He barked at everyone. I just sighed. Luca Bonatiro. The old bastard had found his way back, too. His lab was still the same, filled with all those precious relics of his. I really began to wonder if I hadn't somehow jumped a year backward. In any case, he kicked all of us out. I was just about to leave, until his voice stopped me. Not you, Fry Starlight. I halted and turned slightly to look at him. Excuse me? You'll stay. And so I did. In the end, I found myself alone with Bonatiro. He didn't speak, so I broke the silence myself. Forgive me, but why did you stop me? Bonatiro looked at me for a moment, then went back to fiddling with whatever he had in his hands. You want to know why I kept you from joining the others? Yeah. Isn't training supposed to start now? Training? You're excused from that, Starlight. What? I have nothing left to teach you. You're already stronger than me. My dark eyes narrowed slightly at those last words. But he didn't care and simply continued. The temple is still the same idiotic place no matter who runs it, blind to the monsters they're sheltering. You're overestimating me, clearly. Bullshit. Bonatiro clicked his tongue and rose from his seat. You, that crowned hero, a few upper-year students like you. None of you should remain here any longer. He stepped up to me. There's nothing left for you to gain. His words gave me pause. Would staying at the temple really make me stronger? Would it help me at all? But before I could ask those questions, there was a more important one. Why did I even need to grow stronger in the first place? I had no direction to point my blade anymore. I wasn't the same person. Bonatiro clearly saw the emptiness in my gaze. A lot's happened, hasn't it? I nodded. Yeah, a lot. Figures. Nothing surprising. I let out a quiet laugh at that. Nothing surprising? Did you really expect the student standing before you to win the Victoriad and do all the things I've done? Bonatiro paused for a moment, staring at me with those dull, lifeless eyes. I didn't expect it, but the possibility was always there. And what exactly made you think that? A year ago I was nothing, so what did he see in me? From the very start you were different, kid. Your body didn't house one soul, but two. He said it so casually, but the words struck me like lightning. What did you just say? The air between us shifted instantly. Silence fell. We stared at each other. I hadn't meant to react, but my body had already been conditioned to release killing intent the moment such a situation arose. Couldn't stop it. Bonatiro didn't flinch. In fact, he seemed to take it as proof of what he'd said earlier, when he claimed I was stronger than him. Did you know, Starlight, that I'm blind? What? He kept looking straight at me, pointing at his pupil. It looked perfectly normal. These eyes, they've never seen what others see. All I can perceive is the aura things contain. Aura. Life force itself. That's how Bonatiro could sense the true value of all the strange items he kept in his lab. The first time my eyes landed on you, I saw two auras, one deep, suffocating black, and the other, a shattered white light. Only a faint trace of it remained. I listened silently, hearing something I had never known until now. I assume some lingering will had always been with you. A powerful will, but you've lost it now, since all I can see now is darkness. That's why you weren't surprised by anything I've done? I cut in and he nodded. Exactly. It's not definitive proof, but you could say it was instinct. I let out a dry laugh as I reassessed the man in front of me. I never imagined anyone could know about my dual soul. That really is surprising. I laughed faintly, and Bonatiro spoke again. Life hasn't been kind to you, has it, kid? No. That other aura. Who did it belong to? He asked softly. My father. Abraham Starlight, huh? Yeah, I suppose someone like him. Someone who defies reason could pull that off. Another silence fell between us, but I wasn't thinking about Bonatiro anymore. Instead, my mind drifted back to my father's final words, about the thing that now lives inside me. The dual soul had vanished, yes. But I'd been thinking lately, maybe there was more to it. All that talk about the vessel, the engineer, the nameless, it all pushed me to ask. You said my body now holds a single soul? That's right. Are you sure? There's only one soul inside your body, kid. My eyes don't lie. That body now has a single color. Bonatiro's words only added to my confusion, and that didn't help in the slightest. Not wanting to drag things out, he walked past me and gave my shoulder a firm pat. In any case, you're exempt from my classes, kid. But in exchange. He shouted that last part and I asked, in exchange. The moment I asked, his eyes lit up, and he leaned in uncomfortably close. Let me examine your weapon. Valerian the Black Dread from time to time. What? I stared at him, unable to hide the confusion on my face. That's my only request, kid. I treasure relics, and that sword is undoubtedly one of them. When Bonatiro entered his usual obsessive mode, I knew debating him further would go nowhere. I reluctantly agreed, especially after he reminded me that my ownership of Valerian was no longer a secret to the world. Fry Starlight, a bearer of one of the 7 legendary swords. Actually, 2 of them. Once I gave in, Bonatiro nodded enthusiastically and rushed off to train the others. Excellent. He vanished down the hallway, leaving me behind to wonder what I was supposed to do for the next 3 hours. One day back at the temple, and a handful of old faces was enough to make it eventful already. I just laughed to myself. Even if he wants to live a normal life. Nothing about Fry Starlight is normal, huh? Maybe I'll just go watch the others train. Maybe mess with them a little. With those thoughts, I made my way to the training yard. If my life were a comedy show, I'd definitely watch it. Chapter 243. Refining Talent 1. The Temple, a school that had for generations produced the talents that carried the empire on their shoulders through the ages. And the current generation was no exception. Inside one of the training halls, nothing more than a square arena of solid ground, a different kind of chaos unfolded. Within such a confined space, 20 young men and women moved at breakneck speed, constantly bombarded by dozens of attacks launched from beyond the arena's boundaries. The sounds of explosions and destruction hadn't stopped for over an hour now. 3 instructors, led by Bonatiro, had surrounded the elite class students and relentlessly attacked them from afar. Their only task was survive until the end. Without stepping outside the arena, everyone was drenched in sweat, either fending off or dodging the terrifying waves of a masterclass wave controller like Bonatiro. Among the students, naturally, the crown champion, Snow Lionheart, stood at the front, with Demon Valerian pushing alongside him as expected. The others were making their mark in their own ways. Everyone, except one. A student like them sat off to the side, watching from afar, with nothing better to do during the hours of free time granted to him. Fry Starlight leaned against the wall, watching them with a scowl. Of course, they'd noticed him. Danzo and Ragna immediately began shouting the moment they saw him lounging around doing nothing, but the rainstorm of magical bombardments from the instructors didn't give them the luxury to speak for long. Fry smirked behind a clenched laugh, mocking their misery. "You're moving that ass pretty well, Danzo." With a satisfied grin, Fry raised a thumb toward his struggling friend. "Full marks." Danzo probably couldn't respond, but the throbbing veins crawling across his forehead like worms from sheer rage said more than any words ever could. The arena began to shrink, slowly but surely, forcing many out of bounds. It was absurd watching so many students run around in such a confined space, to the point some crashed into one another. The training continued for a full 3 hours. By the time it ended, only 10 students remained within what was now barely a few meters of ground. They were all drenched in sweat, each to varying degrees. Among them, one might have thought Ghost, who'd elegantly slipped through every attack, was in the best shape, but that wasn't true. Both Fry and Bonatiro realized it at the same time. Among the 20 students, one person hadn't moved since the beginning. She blocked everything, without lifting a finger. It wasn't the hero Snow, nor any of the other so-called monsters. It was the princess. She had deflected and even retaliated against every single attack effortlessly. Her shadows crawled across the ground like a living creature, rising instinctively to shield her while countering with jet-black spikes at blistering speed. Reading her body language revealed the truth. She wasn't even trying. And yet, even in that idle state, she made the hair beneath Bonatiro's robe stand on end. A man ranked S. The first description that came to the mad professor's mind was likely the same any sane person would think. What a demonic power! Sansa was changing, slowly but steadily. Bonatiro grumbled as he declared the session over. The class ended, and on the other side of the room, Fry couldn't hide his interest in the princess, who had clearly undergone, revealed, a great deal since he last saw her. He tried to approach her, but some familiar faces stood in his way. Danzo alone was enough to completely block his path with that massive frame. He grabbed Fry by the shoulder, still dripping sweat, his expression wild. "Tell me, Fry, how did you do it?" "Do what?" "You bribed him. Gave him something rare or something. Tell me, how did you get that bastard to exempt you from training?" Danzo shook Fry violently, gripping his scrawny frame. Meanwhile, Sansa had already left the room. Fry sighed and gently pushed Danzo away to reclaim some breathing space. "Stop yelling in my face. I didn't do anything to him." "That's impossible. Consider it a privilege of being the Victoria champion." Fry hadn't been serious with his words, but it seemed Danzo partially believed him, muttering under his breath. "So the winner really gets privileges like that?" They were just empty words, yet they were enough to spark something inside Danzo, a flare of regret. Regret for not training harder, for not performing better in the Victoriad. That moment of silence from Danzo allowed Fry to turn his attention elsewhere. His eyes met those of the silent assassin, Ghost. The latter simply nodded without a word. Next to him stood Dawn and Snow. At that moment, Fry and Snow locked eyes, an unspoken reunion since the final battle where they'd staked everything. Fry often wondered, had that battle really happened? Or was it just a fever dream? If he were shown the fight from afar and told, "That's you," he would have shaken his head, denying everything. If someone asked him to do it again, he likely wouldn't even know how he pulled it off the first time. Had he truly defeated the hero? But he had no choice but to accept the truth. The memory of that day, the ecstasy of battle, was still carved into his body. And he wasn't the only one who felt that way. Deep inside, Fry held nothing but respect for the man standing before him. "I thought you weren't coming back." It was Snow who broke the silence first. "It's been a while, hasn't it? But here I am, standing before you again. A few months for me, but I imagine it felt like a few years for you." Snow smiled as he said it, extending his hand. It really did. Fry clasped Snow's hand, and immediately he felt the iron-hard grip, the coarse skin marked by calluses earned through endless swings of the sword. By contrast, Frey's hand, thanks to his unique body, was much smoother and cleaner. They each put a bit of force into the handshake, an unspoken acknowledgement before releasing at the same time. "I heard you stood up for me. I owe you one." Fry spoke first, grateful. If not for Snow's intervention, the church would have pressed much harder, likely demanding his execution. "No need to thank me. I did it because I felt it was the right thing to do. That's all." Snow was someone who acted without expecting anything in return, a trait befitting a true hero. But was it really the proper action for a hero to take? For a champion of the Lord of Light who was meant to deliver justice wherever he went? No matter how you looked at it, Fry had been guilty. Yet Snow defended him anyway without a solid reason. Simply because he wanted to. He wanted to face Fry again. He wanted to keep someone like Fry close. It was a selfish desire, one that clashed with his role as a hero. Excited, Snow tried to talk about their last battle, to revisit every moment, every detail, but he couldn't unleash those emotions freely. An awkward tension born of time and distance hung between him and Fry. "Hey, enough with the formal tone. What's wrong with you two?" Danzo cut in. "One of you sounds like a depressed girl who just hit puberty, and the other like a damn priest. Keep this up and I'll kick both of you." A depressed girl who just hit puberty. Fry chuckled at the absurd metaphor. Is that how they saw him? And don't you sound like a kid who just hit puberty yourself? That unexpected jab came from Ghost. Calm, expressionless, and precisely what irritated Danzo the most. He exploded as usual while Snow and Dawn instinctively stepped aside. Fry found himself standing in the middle of a group that reminded him of his high school days. It was an experience no one was meant to live through twice. Yet here he was. He smiled faintly. In moments like this, Fry felt grateful for their straightforward, uncomplicated personalities, people who didn't judge him like the others did. He found himself fitting in with them easily. If he had gone back in time to the days before the Victoriad, he probably would have rejected such relationships outright. But now, maybe he could let it be. Maybe the answer he'd been searching for was right here. The answer to what his father truly wanted for him, when he asked him to live. Fry spent the entire day surrounded by his peers, letting himself drift into the student life he had long denied himself. From time to time, he clashed with people like Demon, though a number of others kept a clear distance from him. Among the most notable were Prince Aegon, who remained locked in his own world as usual, and the princess, who appeared lost in thought. Others like Ceres Moonlight and Clanna Starlight had their own reasons for keeping away. Amid all that, Frey's first official day back at the temple came to an end as he completed everything on his schedule. But just as he was about to leave, Phoenix appeared out of nowhere and stopped him at the edge of the training fields. "Where do you think you're going?" "To my room, I guess." "Not anymore." Phoenix grabbed Fry by the shoulder and led the way. "Your real training begins now." Chapter 244. Refining Talent 2. "Then what do you call everything I've been doing all day?" Fry grumbled, but Phoenix chuckled, his eyes glowing with familiar energy. "You can consider it a warm-up. Honestly, if not for the training you're about to receive, the temple wouldn't even be worthy of having you right now." That finally caught Frey's interest, and Phoenix knew it. "What you're about to attend is a secret training session. Only wielders of the legendary weapons are allowed. Frey's eyes narrowed slightly. Correct. A flicker of anticipation crossed Frey's face. What would happen when Balerion, the Black Dread, clashed against the Sacred Blade Vermithor? But one question lingered more urgently. Will you be leading the session? Phoenix shook his head. Unfortunately, I don't know much about how to fight with legendary weapons. Clearly, Frey muttered, recalling Phoenix's chaotic, brute force fighting style that blended close-quarters brawling with wave controlling. A warrior like that could never teach swordplay properly. Then who's in charge of the training? Frey asked, and Phoenix simply smiled. You'll find out soon. He deliberately left Frey in the dark, walking ahead as they headed to a secluded training ground, hidden far from prying eyes. There, 3 others had already arrived. Snow Demon and, surprisingly, Danzo. Frey didn't understand what was happening. These weren't the people he expected to see in a training for legendary weapon wielders. But Phoenix took the lead and explained. All right, now that everyone's here, we've got 2 wielders of the 7 great swords and 2 bearers of the burning shields. That made Frey turn instantly toward Danzo. Danzo, you! Danzo clenched his fist, his eyes never leaving Demon. You're not the only ones who got their hands on some fancy toys. Phoenix nodded in approval and gestured for Danzo and Demon to follow him. Good. I'll be handling these 2 myself. Meanwhile, Frey and Snow looked at one another in confusion. Pardon me, Snow asked. But what exactly are we supposed to do? Are we just supposed to fight each other? Frey exchanged a glance with him, but Phoenix simply waved as he walked away with the others. Your instructor's already here. Suddenly, a dreadful chill crept up both their spines. They leapt apart instinctively, putting distance between themselves and the figure that had appeared behind them. Just a few steps behind them now stood a woman neither of them had ever seen up close, only on screens or at grand ceremonies. She wore nothing but a tattered black dress and a golden helmet. Your reflexes aren't bad. The former vice director stepped toward them, raising her right hand as a massive golden greatsword extended from it. You! Both Snow and Frey muttered the word at the same time. The woman before them calmly removed her helmet, letting fiery red hair tumble freely down her back. Melina, wielder of the claymore, she said. I'll be your instructor, champion of the church, and champion of the Victoriad. At last they understood. Given their status as wielders of the 7 great swords, it only made sense that their instructor would be one of their own. Arm yourselves. Melina wasn't one for small talk, and with that single word, the battle began. In response, both Snow and Frey instantly grew serious, honoring her command without hesitation. Come, Balerion. Ignite, Vermithor. Within the sealed training ground, 3 of the 7 great legendary weapons were summoned, each one releasing an ominous aura as their inevitable clash drew near. Melina took 1 step forward, and then vanished with the second. Frey barely reacted in time. She appeared like a ghost behind him, and he narrowly blocked her strike. The obsidian blade of Balerion met the golden claymore with a thunderous clash, sparks of fire bursting from the impact. The sheer difference in raw power sent Frey flying across the arena, crashing hard against the distant wall. Melina adjusted her stance immediately as Snow rushed in, attempting to capitalize on her momentary focus on Frey. But she parried his flaming strike with ease, wielding her 3-meter blade with terrifying grace. If you want a surprise attack to work, you must either be fast enough not to give your opponent time to react. She swung, her sword moving like a machine, trapping Snow within a flurry of golden arcs, or strong enough to finish them in a single blow. She paused, intercepting a dark slash launched by Frey from across the room. Using his speed, Frey reappeared above her, aiming a downward strike cloaked in shadow aura. She blocked again. This time the force of his strike cracked the ground beneath her feet. Like that? Frey grinned. Melina nodded, unfazed. Exactly. Frey kept up the pressure and Snow joined in. Both had already realized this was a 2-on-1. But Melina's strength far exceeded theirs. Even together, they posed no real threat to her. Then again, this wasn't a fight to the death. This was training. The three of them became locked in a whirlwind of steel, their clashing auras, gold, black and white, mingling in a chaotic storm. From time to time, Melina's voice echoed between strikes, laced with aura-enhanced clarity. Your strikes are quick, but far too predictable. Rely more on swordsmanship than instinct. Explosions followed her every movement as she gracefully danced between Fry and Snow. You have a terrifying arsenal of elements under your belt, but you favor only a few, especially Star Aura. Learn to use your full potential. Their pace continued to quicken, as though both boys were desperate to prove something, if only to themselves. They still couldn't land a hit. You're both used to fighting one type of enemy. That's why you're struggling against the range of the claymore. In situations like this, treat your opponent as if they're wielding a spear. Yes, ma'am. Without realizing it, both Snow and Fry began responding like disciplined students. After all, it wasn't every day one got to train with an SS-rank swordswoman. Despite her youthful appearance, early 30s at most, Fry and Snow both knew better. The deeper a person's connection to aura, the longer they maintained their vitality. Who knew? Melina might have been the same age as Carmen. And so, Frey's real training finally began. Elsewhere, Danzo and Demon stood face to face. Demon didn't look thrilled. Is there any point to this? Yes, Phoenix replied casually. I want you two to go all out. That way I'll know just how hard I need to hit you when it's my turn. His plan was simple. To turn tanks like them into real monsters, he had to push their durability and resilience to the absolute limit, through pain. Unlike Demon, Danzo was eager. He slammed his fist into his palm, sending a shockwave through the air that made Demon raise a brow. You know, I didn't think the chance would come this soon. The chance to settle the score. You think you're capable of that? Demon scoffed. A silver glow burst around Danzo's body. You'll find out soon enough. Silver aura swirled tightly around Danzo's body, radiating with a brilliance that nearly blinded the eye. From within that wave of light emerged Danzo, clad in a towering silver armor that made him appear far more massive. The helmet of the armor was shaped like the gaping maw of an enraged dragon. The silver dragon armor, Demon muttered, before a wide grin slowly spread across his face. So that's where it ended up. That armor was the prized weapon of one of the largest guilds in the Empire. It had belonged to Danzo's father, Atom Smasher, until recently. But now it had been passed down to the son. Laughing, Demon tore off his shirt, revealing the ominous tattoo etched across his chest and shoulder. Let's see what you've got. A flash of golden brilliance erupted around him as his own colossal armor materialized. Phoenix watched with a pleased smile. The golden dragon armor and its silver twin, two of the SS-class relics. They were the most powerful dragon-forged armors ever crafted by human hands. And now they belonged to two boys who hadn't even turned 18. This generation is terrifying. Before his eyes, the two clashed like colliding tanks. Armor against armor, no weapons, just raw fists. Exactly the way Phoenix liked it. Let's make this damned academy worth something. This time, he would draw everything out of them. The elite were essential to the Empire, and to the coming war with their ancient enemy. They were the talents destined to lead the charge one way or another, which is why they received so much investment and attention. But the title elite didn't mean equality. Yes, they bore the same name, but within their ranks the differences were stark. Only a few truly possessed monstrous potential. Some were fated to rise and shine, others to be forgotten and cast aside. Among those students was a girl, Adriana, the bookworm, the coward, the one who had always carried herself in a way unbecoming of the elite. She now sat alone in her dark room, fixated on something in her hands. Her room was stark, eerily so, especially compared to other girls. Sitting on the floor, Adriana clutched something tightly. For some reason, the longer she looked at it, the more her smile widened, revealing a face no one had ever seen. If there were a word for her expression now, it would be disturbing. Upon closer inspection, the object in her hands was a photograph. A photo of a particular girl. Sansa. Oh, how adorable! Adriana spoke softly, recalling the princess's display of power, the demonic shadows that shredded her opponents. In those fleeting moments, Adriana had barely managed to maintain the mask she'd worn until now. My dear Sansa. She lifted her head to gaze at the room around her. Walls, floor, ceiling, completely plastered with pictures of the princess. Dozens, hundreds, far, far too many. With the same unsettling smile, Adriana's eyes softened further. You really are perfect. Something had definitely changed in that room. Chapter 245, What the Shadows Remember. In the beginning, there was only darkness. Pitch-black room. Strange figures she had never seen before. A cold metal table, slick with blood and a stench so foul it turned her stomach. A blinding light overhead pierced her vision, forcing her eyes shut. Her lips were cracked from dehydration. Her body frail, skeletal, had long since been stripped of anything that once sustained it. The people around her had no faces, not in her eyes, and their words were barely comprehensible noise. What had they done to her? She didn't know. All she remembered was the screaming and how much it hurt. From the depths of the girl, black tendrils erupted, tearing through those strangers like paper, ripping them apart, pulverizing them into a grotesque pulp of blood and flesh. In that darkness, her only ally was the shadow. Ha! The princess opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was a massive gash carved into the wall in front of her. She was still in her usual nightwear, and this was her room in the elite wing of the temple. Barefoot. But what truly unsettled her were the bloodstains on her hands. Sansa trembled. Her chest burned. It's all right. You're safe now. A warm hand gently patted her head. It belonged to a masked man who had appeared behind her soundlessly. His crimson eyes gleamed behind the mask, visible even in the pitch-black room. But Sansa knew him. She recognized him the moment she saw him, and that only stirred the turmoil inside her further. With a strained voice, she asked the question that had haunted her since she awoke, still trapped in a sleepwalking nightmare. Was this my doing? She looked at the blood on her hands. Oliver Kahn immediately shook his head. You didn't do anything. But it was just a nightmare. With a motion faster than sound, his hand struck her neck gently. Sansa collapsed into unconsciousness, and he caught her before she hit the floor. Just a bad dream, he murmured. He placed her back in bed and brushed aside strands of her platinum hair, now slowly darkening to black. Without thinking, his hand moved to his side, feeling the wound in his gut, still seeping blood. But within a moment the flesh knit together. The deep gash sealed itself almost instantly. Oliver Kahn said nothing, but his eyes said a lot as he looked down at the sleeping princess. Fry Starlight's POV. Sleep, eat, train. Make idle conversation with friends. Train again. Eat more. Sleep again. Oh, and take a dump. I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. Head out for light cardio, just a warm-up for the rest of the day. A habit I picked up while preparing for the Victoriad. After my early training session, I return to my room. It's usually 6 a.m. by then. I take a quick shower. Not because I sweat much, this body barely does. But it's a habit I've kept from even before my reincarnation. This body used to have an obsession with cleanliness, and I'm not sure I've completely shaken it. After showering and glancing at my lean but toned frame, I get dressed and leave. On the way, I always seem to run into Snow, Danzo, or even Ghost, who shows up like he teleports in. We chat about the most meaningless things. Utter nonsense, really, but it's typical for kids our age, or rather, their age. After that, just more training, and more training, and even more training. At the end of the day, I spar against one of the most dangerous swordmasters alive. Melina wielder of the claymore. And that's exactly what I was doing now, side by side with Snow Lionheart. Wielding a legendary weapon grants tremendous destructive power to its bearer. But that leap in strength only truly manifests for people like me and Snow. We were barely at rank B. But because our weapons were rank SS, the true range of our power climbed dangerously close to rank S. That's why Balerion has always been my greatest trump card. But it's a different story when an SS rank weapon falls into the hands of an SS rank awakened. At that level, the weapon is no longer the primary source of power. It becomes merely a tool, a refined conduit that brings out the wielder's full potential. And that's exactly what was happening in our battle against Melina. Don't become overly reliant on your weapon. It's just a tool. Can make the battle easier, yes, but it won't win it for you. If your foundation is weak, no weapon will matter. This was our 4th day training under Melina, and even with the 2 of us fighting her together, Snow and I, we still hadn't managed to land a single hit. We had thrown everything we had at her. I'd even used the blood form and my new shadow property. Sure, it made the battle more chaotic, more explosive, but I was still losing. Badly. Snow Lionheart, she called out. You still lack full control over your sword. You need to learn how to channel its abilities properly. I had exchanged countless blows with her myself. Her claymore was just like Balerion, fused to her arm, except hers was absurdly long. Your strikes are powerful, Fry Starlight. Clang. Sparks flew with every clash of steel. With each step, I found myself driven back, crumbling beneath her sheer force. Strong, yes, but empty. She raised her hand, and her blade moved automatically, almost with a will of its own. You don't seem interested in getting stronger. When she said that, her crimson eyes locked onto mine. I forced a faint smile. Was it that obvious? It was. You're different from the Fry I saw during the Victoriad. So, she'd been watching? I thought I was doing a decent job hiding it. She nodded slightly. You are. But your sword is far more honest than you. Truth be told, my current state was objectively better than back then. I had the supreme shadow property now. I was beginning to understand how to harmonize with the shadow adaptation. And yet, there was still a massive gap between the Victoriad Fry and the one I was now. Somehow, the person I was back then felt so much stronger. Is that what they call drive? The drive to live, to push forward, to become better and stronger. Chapter 246, Two Blades. Melina didn't speak further. She was here to teach swordsmanship, not fix the psyche of her students. And that's exactly what she did until the end of our session. 2 hours later, Snow and I collapsed to the floor, drenched in sweat. As always, we hadn't laid a finger on her. My mind was adrift, struggling to find solid ground. After each session, we'd usually exchange feedback with her while watching Phoenix beat the hell out of Demon and Danzo. Fry Starlight, your stance is lacking. Her voice cut through the air, breaking the silence. What do you mean? Your footing is solid, but the issue lies in your right hand. My right hand? How so? You unconsciously try to use it during combat. That means wielding a single sword may not be optimal for you. I was stunned by her observation. It made it clear that I was standing before a true elite. I considered whether a shield might suit that hand. But it doesn't fit your style. That only leaves one option. A second sword. A dual-blade style. Now that you mention it, Snow chimed in. Didn't you fight with your right hand during the Victoriad? He was recalling my battles from the tournament. I nodded. That confirmed Melina's theory perfectly. Try fighting with two swords from now on. It might be your key. I'll keep that in mind. I replied simply as the session officially came to a close. She wasn't wrong, of course. Especially since my right hand was already hiding another flaming sword. A dual sword style, huh? The truth is, I had been hiding the Dark Sister ever since it came into my hands. My father's sword, something I considered a secret trump card to be used only in case of an emergency. Again, that's an old mindset, one I picked up long ago. Keep your aces hidden to survive the stronger foes. Every step I took always had meaning behind it. But now, even all of that felt meaningless. People had started viewing me differently. My abilities were no longer a secret. At this level, no enemy would underestimate me. Instead, they'd stay alert, always ready for whatever I might pull from the shadows. So I asked myself, is there even a point in hiding this weapon anymore? The answer was yes. Hiding it was important. Showing it off would be foolish. But did any of that actually matter? I wanted to think simpler, much simpler. This sword was my father's, his weapon, his closest companion. I wanted to fight with it. I want to use it in battle. A simple desire, selfish, reckless even, but I decided to honor it. Melina was still there when I returned. What is it? We're done for today. I'd like to request a duel, my lady. Wasn't that what we were doing just a moment ago? That was true, but this time what I wanted was something different. Not another training bout. I want something deeper. I want a battle to the death. I didn't want to fight knowing I'd walk away. And I didn't want her to hold back either. Fry Starlight, there's no point in going all out against you right now. You haven't reached the minimum threshold required to justify such a challenge. How could I challenge someone I hadn't even been able to touch? That was the meaning behind her words. But this time I didn't respond with words. Come. From the void, Dark Sister materialized in my hand. I grasped the black katana by its hilt. Melina masked her expression well, but I saw it, the flicker of surprise in her eyes as they fell on that lost blade. The Dark Sister. Not just that. From my other hand, Balerion the Black Dread appeared as well. Wielding two swords, both capable of mass destruction, I felt stronger than ever. But what I truly wanted was to see how far I could push the woman before me. She stepped forward slowly, eyes locked on Dark Sister. That katana, Abraham Starlight. My father left it for me as a gift. I see. She gave a curt nod, then cast off her cloak and summoned her blade. You asked for a real battle, Fry Starlight, and that's exactly what you'll get. Even she seemed exhilarated at the sight of someone wielding two legendary weapons. And that was what made her accept such a childish request. Come at me. She opened the floor, and I accepted. Fight me with everything you've got. Father, I still don't understand the meaning of life you wanted me to find. I still don't know why you robbed me of my right to die. I don't know. But at the very least, this time I'll do what I want. No planning, no manipulation, no clever tricks. I'll simply do whatever I want, and let the wind carry me wherever it may. Then I'll see how far it takes me. With a smile, I launched into a thunderous battle against Melina. The other side of the world, Gavid Lindman, the proud ether-bearer and lord of the Ultras, stood still, clad in his usual formal suit, staring silently at the shattered wall of mages and the sea of torn bodies scattered across the field. A disaster, he muttered as he gazed at the canvas of carnage. I agree, came the voice of the old man, Murgo, who appeared behind him. Together they stared at the same scene. Lord Godfrey was being dragged away, his body battered, bloodied, and armor shattered beyond repair. Above them, floating in the air with a furious glare, stood Astaroth, the 19th ranked demon, clearly shaken, his eyes fixed on a single figure. That figure lay motionless at the center of a massive crater, rusted armor still clinging to his form. As for Astaroth, there was no trace of his right arm, just a faint wisp of flame flickering in the wind where it used to be. We underestimated him, Gavid Lindman cursed under his breath. Here, at this very location, had taken place the battle now known as the Battle of the Eternal Prison. The mission had been straightforward. Lord Godfrey and his forces were to retrieve the strongest hollow, Pontiff Sulivan, in preparation for the coming war. They had truly believed that Godfrey and his army would be enough. But they were wrong, terribly wrong. Pontiff Sulivan had already reached the SS Plus rank. With a savage, devastating fighting style, he had nearly killed Godfrey, until Astaroth intervened at the last moment. And even the demon had not emerged unscathed from a clash with such a mindless monster. In fact, next to Pontiff Sulivan, even a demon seemed sane. The aftermath of their battle was visible in every direction. This place had become nothing but a crater of destruction and war. A war now looming on the horizon. In the end, the Ultras had succeeded. They had captured Pontiff Sulivan. And the Hollows were now officially in play. Chapter 247. Orphans of Ruin 1. What a grim sight! Murgo, with one hand resting on the hilt of his hidden blade. Ether, Gavid Lindman glanced sideways at the staggering old drunk who arrived late. The old man greeted his peer with a faint smile, barely visible through the wild hair covering most of his face. Lord Lindman, as diligent as ever, I take it you were part of the battle? I only delivered the final blow, barely made it in time. That's still impressive. Murgo praised him, though Gavid's scowl only deepened. A shame, really. I would have been here sooner if I had your spatial manipulation skills. You're right. It's a pity you don't. Ha ha. Murgo laughed, ignoring the deliberate jab. He could have joined the battle from the start with his teleportation, and had he done so, they might have subdued the Pontiff much faster, without the cost. But he chose not to. Astaroth won't be pleased with this outcome. He can think what he likes, just as you do. Standing on the desolate plains, on earth that had drunk its fill of blood and corpses, death had become routine. How many dead this time? Hundreds? Maybe thousands. The Pontiff was particularly spirited today. Such a shame what that man has become. You pity the beast that caused all this? Beast? That's a flattering description. Murgo chuckled. You and I, we're monsters too, Lindman. I won't argue with that. Lindman said with a frown. The heavens and the earth. Without warning, Murgo began speaking softly, savoring each word as if unaffected by the carnage around him. Seasons shift endlessly across the sky and soil, and so too do men follow cycles beyond their control. Change is inevitable. To survive, we must adapt. In the end, we all get what we deserve. Perhaps for destroyers like us, our fate will be to lie among these corpses one day. Reclining amid the bloodied dead, Murgo smiled and closed his eyes, drifting into a nap. You damned old fool. Gavid Lindman turned away, leaving the old man alone, unwilling to deal with him further. My fate is the work of my own hands. Though he said it only to himself, Murgo heard it loud and clear, and his smile widened. Opening his eyes, he watched Gavid walk off, the hem of his fine coat billowing behind him. Poor soul. Gavid had no idea he was walking a path inked in fate, one that would lead him precisely where destiny willed. Later, the old man rose again, the stench of death still clinging to the air around him. There you are. He patted the head of a barefoot young man dressed in nothing but a black robe. Hey, old man. What is it, Lawrence? There are so many bodies. I know. It's a shame, isn't it? Why? Why is it a shame? Because the dead no longer have stories to tell, Lawrence. Each one had a tale waiting to unfold, but its threads were severed too soon, whether they lived a life of grace or of hardship. In the end, they all perished. Murgo's voice dipped into solemn depth without warning, prompting Lawrence to scratch his messy white hair. Grace? Didn't they just die because they were weak? Lawrence asked like a child, and Murgo answered with the calm patience of a father. You could see it that way. Had they been stronger, maybe they would have survived. So power decides life and death? Not necessarily. The two walked away from the battlefield and its noise. Why not? You just said they would have lived if they were stronger. In a world ruled by the law of the jungle, Lawrence had instinctively grasped a cruel truth. Remember, Lawrence, no matter how strong you become, there's always someone stronger. Stronger than Murgo? Yes, far stronger than me. By now, the two were far from the battlefield with the Pontiff. Their journey had shifted toward a new goal, recruiting more of the Hollows without warning or permission. Lawrence was a strange one, more like a lost child who had latched onto the only man able to handle him, Murgo. So if strength isn't the answer, then what is? What decides life and death? A good question. Murgo tampered with the space around them, instantly warping the two far away. Let's use the Ultras as an example. How? Demons are beings of terrifying power. Astaroth is only the 19th seat, and yet he's a monster by this world's standards. And the Ultras? Just humans. But they survived by selling themselves to the strongest side. That's how we've made it this far. But the humans in that place, the Empire, they're still alive too. They are. They've survived as well. But the Empire is fractured by nature, between the clergy, the noble houses, and countless rogue factions. Each fights in their own way. Still, when war comes, they rally together in a single force despite their differences. That makes them far more dangerous than they appear. I don't get it anymore. Lawrence groaned, annoyed and confused. He no longer knew what answer Murgo wanted from him. The old man patted his precious Empyrean on the head and looked forward. It's adaptation, Lawrence. Adaptation. Yes, whether it's a righteous warrior who survives by holding on to his beliefs, or a wretched traitor who sells out everyone around him, what matters is adapting to the trials of life and death. In the end, only the best players survive. The ones who learn how to play the game of life. Lawrence sighed in defeat, giving up on trying to understand the deeper meaning. This is way too complicated. I'll just stick with my first answer. Ah, then focusing on getting stronger must be your way. Lawrence. The two continued chatting without pause or fatigue. Eventually, their feet reached a strange place. In the middle of a barren wasteland, an unnatural patch of green burst forth, lush plants and gentle winds, like a mirage more than a reality. In that vibrant patch of earth stood a large building, an old monastery built from black brick, fenced in by tall iron gates. Above its entrance hung a simple sign with just a few words, Isefka Orphanage, an orphanage bearing the symbol of a dove, a sign of freedom, an orphanage in the heart of a dead desert. Hope buried in a pit of despair, even if that was the furthest thing from the truth. What is this place? It's a home for children who've lost their parents. Parents! Lawrence winced at the thought, his mind straining to remember a mother or father he could no longer recall. Murgo gently patted his head as they reached the orphanage gates. There stood a hulking guard who looked down at them, his glowing eyes visible beneath his iron helm. Chapter 248. Orphans of Ruin 2. What business do you have here? The guard was hostile. Murgo showed no signs of matching that hostility. He preferred words. But Lawrence moved first. Without hesitation, he charged the armored man, morphing his arm into a monstrous crimson-black spear of flesh. In a savage blow, Lawrence's arm pierced the guard's chest and tore through his back. He screamed like a madman as tendrils exploded from his arm, bursting through the knight's body and ripping it into scattered chunks of meat. Not that the guard's screams could be heard clearly over Lawrence's frenzied howling. As for Murgo, he simply pulled out his usual drink and sipped calmly, waiting. And out stepped a single man. From inside, Murgo could see the children peeking from the windows, fear etched in their eyes as they looked to that man. Their hope rested on him, as if he were their only savior. A man with long reddish-brown hair, his posture straight like a spear. He wore the robes of a priest, his rugged brown skin hidden beneath them. A golden reading monocle hung loosely over his crimson right eye. Murgo recognized him, and so did the so-called head of the orphanage. Murgo! The man's deep voice echoed, his glowing eyes locked solely on the old drunk. He ignored the feral beast lunging from the side. Lawrence, who shrieked with madness. Lawrence's arm swelled into a grotesque monstrosity as it came crashing down with terrifying force upon the man's body, unleashing a violent shockwave. Blood sprayed. The sound of bones shattering and flesh tearing pierced the air. Lawrence howled, stumbling back as he stared in disbelief at his ruined arm. What had he struck? Was it some unbreakable metal? No, he had struck flesh. The man still stood, untouched, not even a scratch. Even in the haze of his madness, Lawrence could only think one word. Tough! The man finally turned toward the Empyrean, his crimson eyes glowing ominously, as if an insect had dared collide with him. Insolent! A single word in return for a scream that shook the heavens. Lawrence charged again, his body twisting into a monstrous shape as black tendrils spiraled violently around him, trying to crush the man before him. Boom! 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 Suddenly, explosions rang out for miles, like someone had set off a series of devastating bombs. The orphanage director had moved. His arm had struck like a rocket launcher. No aura, no flashy lights, just pure, raw power. In 3 rapid punches, he obliterated flesh and bone alike, leaving Lawrence shattered on the ground. His body broken, mouth and eyes wide open in disbelief, the director raised his fist for a final blow, one that dropped like a reaper's scythe to reap the soul of the writhing boy beneath. But the strike never landed. It was stopped, blocked cleanly by a sword that appeared from thin air. Murgo, holding his blade in one hand, deflected the strike with precision. I see you're harvesting souls on your sacred grounds. Director of the orphanage, Smuff. He spoke the cursed man's name aloud. Smuff responded coldly. The only soul spilled here was ended by your own disciple. The space around them began to quake as Smuff pushed harder. But even that force couldn't move Murgo. A soul for a soul. You know how things work around here, Lord Murgo. My apologies. I never did care for hollow law. They locked eyes, their auras crackling and clashing like lightning around them. In the next breath, Smuff lunged for the kill. Murgo grinned, and with one sweeping strike from his Uchigatana, he unleashed a wave that shredded the entire orphanage into thousands of fragments, slashing Smuff himself into ribbons in less than a second. Or so it seemed. In the chaos, Smuff slowly lowered his hand. Murgo calmly returned his sword to its sheath. Then he chuckled softly. Wise choice. Smuff said nothing. He was still caught up in the vision. What would have happened had that clash been real? It never happened. The battle had taken place entirely in their minds, a mental clash that showed them both the inevitable outcome. And Smuff had realized, fighting Murgo would have been a bad idea. He clasped his hands behind his back and sighed with restrained annoyance. What business do you have with me? Relax. I won't ruin your feast. Oh dear cannibal, I'm just the messenger. A message. War is coming. So arm yourself. Be ready. The demon will reign this time. Another war. Murgo laughed. And not just any war. The final one. After this, the Empire and the Ultras would no longer coexist. One would be erased. Completely. Smuff understood. This time, participation was not optional. A demon and a half-demon had appeared before him. That was all the warning he needed. Without a word, he turned back toward the orphanage. Leave. You're scaring the children. Ah, what a doting father you are. Ah yes, I am the father, and wouldn't you know it? My son has gone astray, and run far from home. Smuff paused for a moment before confirming to Murgo. I will serve, as I always have. The Lord of the Ultras nodded in return. I'll be counting on that. With a single step, the old man Murgo vanished, carrying the broken Lawrence with him, leaving the orphanage director, Smuff, standing alone. Smuff placed a hand over his face as an eerie sound echoed all around him, a sinister, hollow laughter. The time is near, my child born of darkness. It's time to come home. He turned and stepped back into the orphanage as the doors of Yosefka's orphanage shut behind him once more, until the day came again when another lost child needed shelter. Elsewhere on that same earth. But on the opposite side of the coin, the training ground of the temple lay shattered, scarred by the ferocity of the last duel. Huff, huff, Fry exhaled heavily, sprawled out on the ground with both arms stretched wide. In his hands, two blazing black swords, weapons that gleamed brilliantly, yet his body could no longer move. Standing above him was a woman with fiery red hair, a radiant smile gracing her lips. Her breath was also uneven as she rested her colossal claymore gently against Frey's neck. "You've lost. No need to say it. I already know." The two spoke calmly, ignoring the bloodstains and the deep sword scars etched into the ground around them. Melina extended a hand to the wounded Frey, who rose to his feet with difficulty, forcing a crooked smile onto his face. "Lately, I seem to be getting my ass kicked by women a lot." Chapter 249. Ashes of Tomorrow 1. Frey Starlight's POV. Melina extended her hand. I grabbed it with some effort, using it to pull myself up from the ground, my body aching from the relentless beating I had just taken. "You fought well," she said. Coming from the infamous swordmaster, those words felt oddly out of place, especially with her massive claymore still resting near my throat. Should I take that as a compliment? Not in the slightest. She shook her head. "Your ability to stand is proof enough." It wasn't exactly comforting, but Melina never sugarcoated things. This might have been her version of high praise. We had fought for exactly 15 minutes. The limit of how long I could maintain blood form with Valyrian, amplified by Dark Sister's aura surge. And even with all that, I barely managed to keep up with the iron hurricane that was Melina. Naturally, the moment those 15 minutes ended, the battle was over. Throughout the fight, and even now, there was something strange in her eyes. A look I couldn't quite place, but one I couldn't ignore anymore. Is something wrong?" "You," she answered without hesitation. "I never thought I'd see someone wielding two of the ancient weapons at once. Is that really such a big deal? I knew no one had ever wielded two of the 7 legendary swords at the same time. But in the end, they were still just weapons. Anyone could technically find them. Apparently, I was wrong. Her piercing stare told me just how little I understood. SS-ranked swords aren't ordinary weapons. Not just anyone can handle them. That made some sense, though I hadn't struggled with either sword so far. Are there requirements or something? I couldn't recall writing anything like that in the lore, aside from Vermithor, Snow's sword. Thankfully, Melina was patient enough to explain. "These swords aren't just forged steel," she said, gently running her hand over her golden claymore. "They're fragments of riddles shaped into blades. Sometimes, it's the sword that leads you, not the other way around. They weren't meant to be lumped in with ordinary weapons. You must have experienced it. Those moments when the sword feels alive, when it acts not as a tool, but as something sentient." I looked at Valyrian. The Black Dread had been with me since my Shadow Sect days. We'd seen a lot together. And yes, there were moments where it moved or acted in ways beyond my understanding. "I see. You felt it too." "Kind of. It's like possession," she said. "A subtle one. Possession. Yes, sometimes the nature of the blade affects you. A thirst for blood, a surge of emotion, or even something more direct, like the blade moving on its own. What I mean is, these swords have a will of their own. They test their wielders before they ever submit. A test was what happened in the Shadow Sect Valyrian's trial? And what about Dark Sister? It had followed me from the start. Did that mean I'd already passed its test? Frey Starlight, because they have will, these swords gradually consume the one who bears them. They constantly influence you. That's why wielding two of them is nearly impossible. Everyone who's tried either died or went insane. Most people could barely handle one. Add another and it should have crushed me. And even if they could, the swords themselves had pride. They refused to be wielded together. But here you are. Melina stepped around me slowly, eyes analyzing every inch of me, carrying two blazing swords as if it were nothing. Your body can withstand blows meant for someone in the SS class, and you're barely in B rank. Even if Dark Sister and Valyrian boosted my power tremendously, it shouldn't be enough to close that kind of gap. Your foundation matters. Everything else is just reinforcement. There's something unusual about you. Her words weren't wrong. I won't argue with that, I said with a faint smile. Even I don't fully understand myself. There was far more chaos inside my life than I could ever make sense of. May I ask you something? She said. Why do you fight? What do you mean? Everyone who comes to the temple has something driving them, a desire or ambition that pushes them to fight. Things like power, fame, or even something trivial like wanting to make friends or live a better life. Which one are you, Lord Starlight? The moment she asked, I realized she had seen through me. She was the type who could read an opponent with just a few exchanges of the blade. A reason to fight. I used to have one, not too long ago, but now not anymore. My goal was clear, distant, yes, and the path to it was rough, often feeling impossible. But it was always there. I knew exactly what I wanted. That clarity helped me fight beyond my limits. But now, there's too much clouding my mind. A lot has happened recently, so what should I strive for now? Should I burn what remains of me chasing revenge against a distant enemy beyond my reach? Or should I search for other truths hidden behind the curtain? Or perhaps, it's all far simpler than that. I don't know anymore. I had no idea what Melina saw in me, or what she felt from the emptiness of my words, from the hollowness in my eyes. But she reached out, gently placing her hand on my shoulder. It was a slim hand, fitting for a woman, yet the firmness in her touch proved otherwise. It was the hand of someone who had devoted everything to the blade. It's all right, she said softly. You can fill that emptiness, piece by piece, and figure out who you are in time. That's why the temple exists, after all. That was her way of telling me to lean on her, that she would help me. I couldn't fully grasp her true intentions, but for now, I chose to accept the hand she offered. I'll look forward to that. She nodded once. After that, we sat together and discussed my new way of fighting. I wasn't used to dual wielding yet, but according to her, I had the talent for it. What I needed now was to strengthen my foundation and truly understand my own capabilities. That included mastering the first stage of shadow adaptation, which I had finally reached. All things considered, I realized I still had a long road ahead of me. Well then, I'll see you tomorrow, Lady Melina. Yes. I saluted the red-haired swordswoman and made my way out. As I walked, I glanced at the annoying system window that occasionally popped up in front of me. Ding. Melina Maiden. Current level SS. Affection points 15. The Claymore bearer is curious about you. More information cannot be displayed due to insufficient affection points. Curious about me. Huh? Well, I suppose that's better than her hating me. With that thought, I left the training field. Meanwhile, Melina remained behind, her eyes lingering on me as she pondered what had just occurred and what had happened the day before. Once she was certain she was completely alone, Melina raised her sword skyward, her gaze locked on the blade. What a strange generation. Her crimson eyes reflected against the golden edge of the claymore. Yesterday, the church's champion came to me in that strange form of his. And today, the Victoria champion wields two flaming swords. Strangest of all, both had managed to withstand her blows. Am I starting to rust? In that moment, they say someone heard the sound of a sword cutting through the air from miles away. Chapter 250. Ashes of Tomorrow 2. Fry Starlight's POV. When I left the training grounds, night had already fallen, but the temple was still lively. In an effort to distance themselves from the looming chaos of war, the temple's overseers ensured that the place remained bustling around the clock. Even the students did their part in their own ways, and the temple's walkways were now packed to the brim. I wandered between restaurants and shops that looked more like a small city than facilities belonging to an academy. Moments like these, I really missed the old man, Shaheen. Who knows what that cursed geezer was doing right now? I just hoped he was still alive. After wandering a bit, I picked a restaurant that served dishes from what used to be called French cuisine, then sat and started fiddling with the system for a while. The new system hadn't changed much, except for the introduction of the affection point feature. I checked my stats, same as always, alongside my current achievement points. I was in rank B- right at the peak of that tier to be specific. In terms of abilities, I had unlocked the third-person perspective, a feature that allowed me to observe or even lightly influence people who had high affection toward me. On that note, I decided to test it out since I didn't have much else to do. The first person that came to mind was my sister, Ada, but I'd already used it on her several times. So I decided to switch things up. My pick ended up being Danzo. His affection score toward me was 50, probably the bare minimum required to activate the ability. Danzo Smasher. Affection points, 50. Danzo sees you as both a friend and a trusted ally. Your unwavering will, strong enough to endure hell and still remain standing, has earned his deep respect. Available information. Name, Danzo Smasher. Rank, B.
Combat style, Sky Maneuver.
Alright then, let's give it a shot. I activated the ability, and that strange sensation of immersion returned, like my soul was being pulled out of my body. A wave of nausea hit me as everything went dark. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself floating in the air, and the scenery around me had changed completely. I was inside a spacious room, simple yet elegant in its details. Looking down, I saw someone familiar. Huff, huff. I heard the sound of rough breathing and sweat dripping heavily. There he was, Danzo, doing push-ups like a madman, muscles gleaming under the light. Push-ups, huh? That checks out. It was exactly what I expected of him. The scary part was, he wasn't even counting. I figured he'd just keep going until he physically collapsed. Judging from the look of it, his rep count must have been in the thousands. I spent the next few minutes drifting around in my ethereal form. Not gonna lie, I was pretty excited at first. I mean, spying on people as a ghost? Yeah, it's unethical, but also kind of thrilling. To watch everyone, knowing none of them could see you? If I wasn't mentally stable, I'd probably have caused some disasters with this power by now. Stay sane, Fry. Stay sane. I pushed aside any unwelcome thoughts and continued floating near Danzo. I tested the limits of the ability, like range, for instance. Unfortunately, I couldn't move more than a few meters away from the target, meaning I was stuck orbiting Danzo's ass. Second, I wanted to know if there was a time limit. Minutes passed, one after another, but no signs of the ability ending. So I concluded it must be aura-based. In other words, I could probably stay in this form as long as I wanted, thanks to my SSS tier aura reserves. I kept drifting lazily above Danzo, who had now switched to doing one-handed push-ups. Bored, I opened the system interface and idly scrolled through it. So far, every system ability had held some kind of meaning. Whether it was the direct advice, the writing functions, or something else. The system didn't give anything without purpose. Well, aside from side missions, of course. Which made me wonder, what's the point of this new affection system? Really? Was the system trying to push me into deepening my connections with others? Trying to make me understand them better? The more I thought about it, the more confused I became, and it wasn't just affection points that had changed. There was another ability I hadn't touched in a long time. A glimpse of the future. The ability that once let me see a snapshot of a coming event had evolved. Glimpse of the future. The upgraded ability now grants a short sequence. A few seconds of a future event. The image had become a video. It was a terrifying skill, to be honest. I mean, it literally showed me the future. I didn't use it during the Victoriad, because I was too afraid of seeing myself lose. But now it might just be one of the most powerful tools I had. Suddenly, I remembered what I'd seen before, that vision of half the temple in ruins. Back then, I thought the cause was the temple core explosion. But I was wrong. Also, is it really safe to trust that the future shown to me is accurate? I don't know much about time manipulation, but one thing I do know is that the future isn't fixed. It can shift with even the slightest action. In other words, just by seeing a glimpse of the future, my own behavior might change and create an entirely different outcome. And that change won't necessarily be for the better. So where did I even get an ability like this in the first place? Could it be that the future is actually predetermined? That the destruction of half the temple hasn't happened yet, but will, inevitably? I started getting a headache just thinking about this whole time-based nonsense, so I decided to shelf it for now. Yeah, let's not mess with time. It was probably for the best. Suddenly, a realization hit me. Wait, what exactly happens to my body when I enter this state? As soon as I thought that, I realized I'd been spying on Danzo for over half an hour. The bastard was still doing push-ups, which must have thrown off my sense of time. I immediately deactivated the ability, and invisible hands dragged me back into reality along with a wave of nausea. When I opened my eyes, I found my face buried in the mashed potatoes and chicken stew that had been served to me. My hair and face were a complete mess. I slowly pulled myself up, wiping off my face, only to see everyone in the restaurant staring at me like I was insane. A few staff members were whispering worriedly, and I could tell they'd probably tried to wake me several times without success. I quickly paid the bill, muttered an apology, and rushed out of there. Let's not do that in public again. Yeah. That was embarrassing. I returned to the elite dorms afterward. I didn't really have anything to do. Even the system missions were empty aside from those twisted side quests telling me to get into a relationship with people like Saris Moonlight. I'd been ignoring those for obvious reasons, so I was left with nothing to occupy myself. But I knew this quiet wouldn't last forever. That blue-eyed bastard, the engineer, I knew he wouldn't leave me alone. It felt like he knew too much about me, as if he had orchestrated everything from the start, from the moment I was born. A man like that could be lurking nearby right now, somewhere I couldn't see. That's why I was sure this peace was only temporary. The storms would return again. Storms I wasn't even sure I'd be ready for. All I can do is keep giving it my all, just like I always have. Right, Father? With a faint smile, I returned to my room, thus ending another day within the temple. Chapter 251. About Love. Fry Starlight's POV. A full month had passed since my return to the temple and the start of the second year. You're looking way better these days, man. Danzo slicked his hair back as we walked together down the main path toward class. Me in the center, with Danzo on my right and Ghost on my left. Better? What exactly changed about me? I'd heard the comment more than once, usually from Danzo. He always paid attention to details. The bags under your eyes are fading, and your aura's different. You're nearly done with your emo phase. He noticed things I never did about myself. If I had half your energy, maybe I wouldn't have had any of those issues to begin with. The guy does push-ups until he passes out. There's a limit to how insane one person should be. Hey, neither of you could handle my energy. Especially you, Twig Boy. He pointed at Ghost, grinning. Ghost stayed silent as always. Normally that'd provoke Danzo, but lately the two had mellowed. They'd grown used to each other. How've things been with you, Ghost? Nothing bothering you, right? I asked that question a lot. His answer never changed. Everything's fine. He never questioned why I asked. That was just who he was. Why do you keep asking him that every single day? Danzo butted in naturally. No special reason. Oh, I get it. Just look at him. He looks like he might drop dead any second. How does someone fight with a skeleton for a body? Danzo started circling him like usual. Ghost, unbothered, answered coolly. This skeleton's more than enough to flatten your brick wall of muscle. There it was. Haha, that's great. Danzo laughed and rolled up his sleeves. Seeing what was coming, I drifted away from the scene. Then show me, you bastard. They'd grown closer, sure, but a fight was still inevitable. I glanced back one last time. Ghost dodged Danzo's swings like they were nothing. The silent assassin had chosen me over Snow in the end. And since I wasn't pushing him away anymore, we somehow ended up as friends. Ding. Ghost Umbra. Affection points. 50. This person considers you an essential part of his life. Available information. Name Ghost Umbra. Rank B+. Combat style? Current thought. I wonder what goes on in that musclehead's mind. If he even has one to begin with. I didn't fully grasp what that last part meant. Maybe it was related to the light and shadow talk he was always bringing up. Still, Ghost belonged to the Shadow Court, an organization that felt like a constant headache for anyone in its sights. He'd broken their code during the Victoriad by using his full power. I expected backlash. I even used the third-person POV on him a few times, but nothing happened. Maybe I didn't know my old story as well as I thought. Either way, I waited for whatever was next, but it was all still hazy. I opened the system, glancing at the quest log. Main quests: eliminate the darkness of the Imperial family, 5,000 achievement points. Failure penalty -5,000 points. Death of the prince and princess. Yep. I had no idea how that quest even triggered. It had just appeared. I made my way to class. She was there, sitting with the others. Sansa, alongside Cerys Moonlight and Selena Hemsworth. For some reason, I knew the darkness mentioned in the quest wasn't referring to her snake brother. If the target were Aegon, the quest wouldn't have popped up now. As twisted as he is, he's still smart. He'd never go so far as to kill the Emperor, and I doubt he could even if he tried. No, the real answer was Sansa. Ever since that mission appeared, I've tried getting closer to her several times, but we've barely managed to talk for more than 5 minutes. It was as if some unseen force kept pushing me away. She'd grown quieter, her eyes darker, and her once lustrous hair had started to lose its shine. "Hey you!" While I was absent-mindedly staring at her from my seat, Ragna turned around from the desk in front of me. "Ragna? What is it?" The spear-wielding brute studied me for a moment before asking, "Is it, maybe?" "What?" He leaned in a little, sparking my curiosity. "What do you think about the princess?" That caught me off guard. "In what sense?" I tried to play dumb, but he went straight for the throat. "I think you're in love with her." "And why would you think that? Are you really asking me that?" Ragna sighed, whispering as he leaned on my desk. "You've been staring at her for weeks now. You keep trying to approach her. There are rumors already, man." So everyone thinks that too?" "Yeah. Get a grip, man. Don't let your feelings rule you like some animal." Love advice from Ragna. "No need to worry. It's not what it looks like." I guess it's easy to misinterpret things in situations like this. And, truthfully, my words probably didn't sound very convincing. Ragna patted my shoulder and nodded solemnly. "No worries. I get it." "Get what?" "Like I said, first loves are always the hardest. You're just unlucky yours happens to be the princess. She's way out of your league, but don't let that get you down. One day, you'll find your true love." He wasn't going to listen. "Whatever, man. Let's just drop it." Ragna nodded again, thinking he fully understood my struggle. He must have thought I looked heartbroken after being rejected. Class started with Sophia as usual at the front. Sitting in the back, I leaned against my chair and stared at the ceiling. "First love, huh?" I chuckled at myself, dumbly reflecting on everything that had happened. I've been completely lost ever since I lost my reason to live. So I waited and waited in silence until that mission appeared, something I took as a hint, a sign. And the moment it did, I chased after it like a child, desperate for someone to tell me what to do. I didn't even notice the way people were looking at me, how I appeared in their eyes. Now that I've finally opened my eyes, I realized everyone saw it. It must have looked pathetic. This really isn't like me. I wonder, does she think the same? Ding. Name: Sansa Valerian. Affection points: 50. Sansa sees you as a weird friend, but doesn't mind having you around. Current thought: I feel sleepy. So simple. After all, that girl can read emotions through facial expressions. She must have already figured out that those rumors weren't true. For the first time, I was actually thankful for her strange ability. Still, that didn't change the fact that I needed to get a better grip on myself moving forward. But thinking back on Ragna's words, "Love, huh? I remember writing something like that in the novel. I glanced around the main characters near me. Each one had veered so far from the path I'd originally planned. In the early outline, the war wasn't supposed to start anytime soon. The characters were meant to live peacefully for a while in the temple. Naturally, that peaceful environment would have led to relationships blossoming here and there. After all, they were basically high schoolers in a fantasy setting. But now, thanks to the looming war and all the changes, no romance had bloomed yet. I hadn't even seen any dating among the elite students, despite how common it once was at the temple. Honestly, I preferred it this way. My mental age had long since passed 30. The last thing I wanted was to get involved in some teenage romance drama. Yeah, let's definitely not go down that road. Chapter 252. The Dark Princess Rises. Fry Starlight's POV. The hours passed quickly, and I suddenly found myself caught in an unexpected conflict. After we finished the usual training sessions, a large arena had gathered the elite class into two sides, boys versus girls. At the forefront of our side stood Danzo and Ragna, who were already engaged in a heated argument with several girls, most notably Selena and Klana. Repeat what you just said? The girls looked furious, yelling at the two walking mountains of muscle towering over them. Having trouble with your hearing? No worries, I'm generous enough to say it again. All of you are just support standing in the back while we're the ones doing the real fighting. Heh! A perfect mindset for muscleheads like you. Just a bunch of brainless brutes. The argument, unsurprisingly, had escalated between Danzo and Klana Starlight in particular. I sighed, throwing a glance toward Phoenix, who stood off to the side, laughing. This was all his doing. He'd been the one to suggest a match between the boys and girls of the class. He clearly did it on purpose. I was sure of it. Either way, this wasn't going to end peacefully. Don't make me laugh, girl. You talk all high and mighty, but only one of you even made it to the final 8 during the Victoriad, and she got her ass kicked out in the quarterfinals. Danzo hit a nerve. Klana had no comeback for that. Meanwhile, Saris frowned slightly. He was clearly referring to her. But she wasn't the one who replied this time. Oh? So you're basing your grand judgment on the Victoriad? Huh. It was Selena who stepped up now. And what else should I base it on? With a calm smile, the sorceress drew her wand and pointed it at Danzo. It's simple. Let's fight. The top 3 girls against the top 3 boys. That way you'll get your answer instead of relying on pathetic assumptions. Reasonable. She hit back with a challenge while mocking him between the lines. That girl really is something. Perfect. Glad it came from you. As expected, both Danzo and Ragna took the bait instantly. The argument reminded me of those heated debates that always used to flare up in the past. Especially from women who believed men were useless altogether. The whole thing gave me a bad feeling, especially when Danzo turned toward us. I was standing beside Snow, and he wore the same deadpan expression as me. Hey, don't tell me. Yeah, looks like we're really doing this. Danzo headed straight for us, just as we expected. Princess number 1 and Princess number 2, you're fighting. Why us, exactly? Are you playing dumb? You're the Victoria champion and the runner-up. Of course you're fighting. We want a flawless victory. Danzo was serious about this. Meanwhile, the girls had already picked their team of 3. The sorceress Selena, the wave controller Saris, and the third one, the one I focused on the most, Sansa. Looks like they've settled their lineup. We spoke among ourselves, just as the prince stepped back with that usual sly grin. I don't think I'll be joining you, gentlemen, but best of luck. His friendly words didn't hide the cold look in his eyes, which remained fixed on Sansa as he walked away. Ghost vanished just as quietly. He wouldn't be joining either. Snow, after accepting his fate, grabbed a standard sword and stepped forward. So who's on our team? Me, Fry, and you? I guess so. Danzo was already geared up and ready to go when... Stop! A surprising figure stepped forward. Demon Valerian, with his slicked-back blonde hair and ever-combustible attitude. I'll fight. Step back. Gray hair. Huh? And why the hell would I do that? Danzo snapped, glaring at him. You're the weakest among them, and you've lost every single fight against me. So what are you whining about? You barely managed to win. That doesn't change the fact that I did win. Step back. Demon was determined this time, and somehow managed to push Danzo out of the way. Selena didn't miss the opportunity to mock Danzo, who wouldn't even be fighting. You were running your mouth just a moment ago, and now you're stuck watching from the sidelines. Pathetic. She laughed, then turned her attention back to her opponents. Fry Starlight, Snow Lionheart, and Demon Valerian. It could easily be considered the strongest possible team, to the point the entire training field started filling up with students the moment word spread about what was happening. Standing shoulder to shoulder, I glanced at Demon. I didn't think you'd be interested in a match like this. The proud lion of House Valerian wasn't known to waste his time on meaningless duels. I'm usually not, but this time is an exception. Sparks of lightning erupted around him as his gaze remained fixed on one person. I just wanted to fight her, at least once. He was talking about her, Sansa, the princess who had sparked so many questions with that mysterious, demonic power of hers. Sure, on paper our side looked far stronger, but that wasn't necessarily true. Sansa had purposely stayed out of the Victoriad. Selena, too, hadn't tried her best because she'd been dealing with Aegon at the time. If the princess had fought freely using her demonic powers without restrictions, I wonder what would have happened back then. Now, it seemed I was about to find out. Phoenix stood in the center of the ring and gave the signal. Begin! Come on, mighty men! Show us what you're made of! Those were the last words we heard before the battle began. 2 duelists and a tank, against a sorceress and 2 wave controllers. But the fight didn't go as expected at all. Selena and Cerys teleported away instantly, while Sansa stepped forward. Alone against all 3 of us? From the very start of the fight, Sansa engaged us at close range while Selena and Cerys bombarded us from a distance. Demon took the brunt of everything, focusing entirely on charging the princess, absorbing all the hits with his hardened body. He moved at a terrifying speed for his size and swung a brutal punch at the slim figure in front of him. From afar, everyone heard the devastating impact as a wave of lightning aura exploded across the arena. Demon was shocked to see a black pillar erupt between him and Sansa, blocking his strike completely. He tried to force his way through, but dozens of shadowy tendrils burst out of the pillar and lashed at him. What the hell are these things? The tank held his ground and attacked alongside Snow, coming from both flanks simultaneously. It was a perfectly coordinated assault. The kind we'd mastered after all our battles against Melina. But Sansa didn't even move to block us. She just let the shadows do all the work. Black spikes appeared from thin air, one after another, targeting us like oversized bullets. The terrifying part was that we couldn't even cut through those shadows. We could barely deflect them. There's no point in trying to cut them, Sansa said flatly. Many stronger than you have tried, and they all failed. Meanwhile, Cerys and Selena rained down endless barrages of fire and ice spells. We couldn't even get close. The entire arena was already blanketed in Sansa's shadows. Trapped like rats in a cage, we couldn't move an inch. We didn't realize how serious it was until the moment those shadows nearly swallowed us whole. Black tendrils, razor-sharp spikes, and shadowy blades rained down on our heads with deadly speed. I don't even know when Demon started using his black lightning, or when Snow unleashed his full arsenal of elements. As for me, I tapped into my newly acquired shadow immersion state, alongside 10,000 steps of shadow. Sure, we didn't use our legendary weapons, but we were fighting seriously. We didn't hold back. We didn't retreat. But fighting those shadows felt like taking on a black sea forged from unbreakable steel. Massive black hands formed from the shadows, slamming Demon into the wall with a brutal barrage of strikes, no matter how fast I moved. Alongside Snow, who even activated Void Step, we couldn't get within 5 meters of Sansa. Cerys and Selena's barrage only made things worse. It was relentless artillery, non-stop. the kind of pressure that brought back memories of what Kailuk once unleashed. And yet, despite the fact that the three in front of us were far weaker than Kailuk, they somehow felt more terrifying. The reason was simple. The princess. Wave controllers typically struggle in direct combat. They lack the physical capabilities to stand toe-to-toe with duelists. But Sansa had completely erased that weakness. She didn't even give us room to breathe. Forcing my body beyond its limits, I surged toward her, weaving through the tendrils and dark blades that kept hammering toward me. Even with my speed, several struck my body. But despite the pain, I broke through, piercing the black tide. There, standing right before Sansa, I raised my sword and unleashed as much aura as I could muster. 10,000 steps of shadow, infinite darkness. Shadow aura surged into my blade, erupting toward her like a vortex. But Sansa merely smiled. She raised her palm toward me. Calm, effortless. Your darkness is lukewarm, Fry. I heard her voice beside my ear, just before her shadows surged from nothingness and swallowed me whole. Darkness collided with darkness. But just as she said, mine was faint, shallow, compared to the abyss she commanded. Seconds later, I found myself embedded into the far wall of the arena. And that was just 15 minutes into the fight. Under the stunned gaze of everyone present, in the midst of a shattered arena and a ceiling that had been entirely blown away, tendrils of black still stretched high above us. That was when Phoenix finally stepped in to stop the battle. Our bodies were wrecked, torn apart in ways no sparring match should ever allow. Especially Demon. His chest had been sliced open by a vicious blow. Propping myself up on my sword, I exchanged a glance with Sansa. She looked completely unaffected. Demon shouted that the fight wasn't over yet, but Phoenix ended everything by force. He saw no reason to continue. The champion of the Victoriad, the champion of the Church, and the beast raised by House Valyrian, all of us were utterly defeated by the Dark Princess. Chapter 253, Shadows Beneath the Throne 1. Fry Starlight's POV. It took a full minute of silence, me and everyone else, just to process what had happened, before the crowd erupted into cheers for the princess who had just delivered a breathtaking display. Where did all these people come from? Snow muttered beside me, still trying to pull himself together. None of us had suffered fatal injuries except for the deep gash across Demon's chest. But we were in rough shape. The temple students who'd witnessed the match were captivated by Sansa. She had just defeated the students believed to be the strongest of their generation. The match hadn't been broadcast to the Empire's citizens. It was limited to a handful of people. But rumors would spread, inevitably. And without even realizing it, Sansa had just scored major points against Aegon in the race for the throne. Speaking of the prince, he stood clapping alongside the others, a calm smile drawn across his face. What just happened was clearly a blow to him. Because no matter how intelligent or cunning an emperor may be, those traits are meaningless without overwhelming strength. An emperor is, first and foremost, the empire's shield and sword. Their only requirement is to be strong enough to defeat anyone. And Sansa had just shown that kind of strength worthy of the throne. So why are you smiling, Aegon? Where exactly does the darkness within the imperial family lie? What the hell were those shadows? I couldn't cut through them, and they were ridiculously fast. Demon and Snow had already started breaking down what they'd just faced. Sansa's shadow ability was vast in range, harder than steel, faster than the eye could follow, and disturbingly versatile. It was, without exaggeration, an absurdly well-rounded power with no visible weaknesses. You could almost call it a perfect shadow ability, if such a thing existed. Her darkness isn't natural. I've only felt something like that once in my life. Snow was inching closer to the truth. He had sensed this kind of power once, during his fight with the masked man from the Ultras, the man who wielded an otherworldly black flame unlike anything he'd seen. Sansa's shadows carried that same energy. It was only a matter of time before people realized she was using a demonic ability. If they hadn't figured it out already. What about you, Fry? Snow's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Her shadows are definitely nothing like ghosts. Obviously, Demon muttered, sparks of lightning dancing between his fingers. The Valyrians have always inherited light and lightning, generation after generation. He clenched his fist, casting a final glance toward his cousin. But that cursed darkness, only the gods know where it came from. Different opinions, but from the outside, we probably just looked like a group of losers licking their wounds. I didn't linger long. I slipped away at the first chance, distancing myself from the roar of cheers and from Danzo's shouting as Selena continued mocking him. I wasn't even sure how I ended up at one of the temple's private gardens. I sat alone on a bench, staring at the system screen and the one mission that had been haunting me for some time. Eliminate the darkness of the Imperial bloodline. Time remaining 23 days. It was difficult to grasp what exactly this mission wanted from me. If Sansa was the darkness in question, did that mean I was meant to kill her? What if the darkness was Aegon instead? Or somewhere else entirely? Still, I doubted the system would throw me against someone like Mikar, not unless it wanted me dead. No, I was almost certain that the target this time was Princess Sansa. So then what? I had no intention of killing her, and I wasn't even sure I could. I've always hated these kinds of missions, ones that throw me blindly into the unknown. But this time, I had the tools to shine a light on that uncertainty. And that tool was one of the system's most broken abilities. Glimpse of the future. The more I thought about it, the more terrifying it seemed. It literally allowed me to see the future. That kind of power broke the rules of this world. And honestly, I had no idea why I even had access to something like this. During the Victoriad, I'd avoided using it. I was too afraid of seeing myself fail. But now, there was no reason not to use it. Except, its cost was high. Very high. But I had enough points saved up from completing the final mission before. So after a deep breath, and for the first time in a long while, I used my cheat ability once again. The mission Eliminate the Darkness of the Imperial Bloodline had a countdown. 23 days remaining. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I decided to look 23 days into the future to see how this would all unfold. Show me the fate of that damned family, please. It cost me a full 1,000 achievement points, but the ability activated flawlessly. Reality tore apart around me, like someone had taken an eraser to the world, and the colors gradually came together to form the scene I wanted to see. My heartbeat accelerated from how violently I was yanked out of the present. In the past, this ability would only show me a single image. But now, what unfolded before me was a moving scene. So vivid, so real, I felt like I had actually traveled into the future. It was nighttime. I floated like a ghost in the sky, watching from above the royal district. A place I had only seen before in photographs. It was a region brimming with majestic castles and towering palaces. Among them, 3 massive castles stood above the rest, which I assumed belonged to Mikar and his sons. Everything was eerily quiet. Just another crisp, uneventful autumn night. Seconds ticked by, then minutes, and I began to think I had just wasted 1,000 achievement points for nothing. But of course, that was just the calm before the storm. How strange. How easily the world can shift, as if someone were tampering with my vision and senses. Boom! With a deafening explosion, one of the 3 castles erupted in flames. Screams echoed through the night. From beneath the rubble, pitch-black tendrils tore into the sky, as fire and shadow swallowed everything. I watched those black tentacles shred through anything in their path, while something crawled through that cursed darkness. Aha! Aha ha 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 ha! And at the center of it all, a creature, a demon, laughed maniacally, as it slaughtered every soul in its way, painting the land with blood. It slithered across the ground like a plague, bringing destruction and death in its wake. And it had only one target. From the imperial castle, Mikar emerged, carrying a colossal spear in hand. His face and golden eyes were cold as ever. Serpents of lightning coiled through the sky, illuminating the night as the Emperor hurled his weapon at the thing crawling toward him. The bolt of lightning. An attack worthy of an SS plus entity clashed with the cursed shadows, unleashing waves of destructive power. I was thrown from that twisted reality and woke up, back on the garden bench, drenched in sweat, with a cold hand on my shoulder. I could feel the sweat crawling across my skin. My breathing was erratic. My heart pounded against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. I turned to see whose hand it was, and within moments I had my answer. Sansa? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. How long have you been here? It took everything I had to keep my composure, trying to meet her gaze while silencing the primal instinct inside me screaming to get away. Sansa, ever observant, was already watching me closely. I had to lock down my expression fast, or she'd see right through me. I've been here for a while. I called your name a few times but got no answer. Ah, I guess I got lost in thought again. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually nice to see you acting like yourself again. What do you mean? I asked. Her reply wasn't what I expected. You've looked empty ever since you came back. Such a sharp insight, as always, from the princess. Empty, huh? Now that you mention it, we haven't really talked like this in a while. Every time I tried to find her, something would get in the way. But when she came looking for me, nothing stopped her. Yeah, it wasn't easy sneaking away from all those students earlier. Can't blame them. You did just wipe the floor with me, Snow and Demon. She didn't respond immediately. Maybe she was thinking about something. But I didn't give her time. I followed with another question. How have you been lately? Sansa tilted her head and looked at me. I'm fine. Nothing out of the ordinary. What about your power? Those shadows. The moment I added that last question and studied her expression. It lasted for less than a second. But even though she tried to hide it gracefully, I noticed the faint crease in her brow before she smoothed it away. She was incredibly skilled at controlling her facial expressions. I assumed it was one of those habits she'd mastered over time, likely due to her status as a princess. Because of that, I couldn't tell if I was imagining things, or if I'd really seen it. In response, she simply raised her hand, allowing thin strands of shadow aura to swirl around her fingers. I've recently reached the point where I can manipulate it freely. Sansa began shaping her shadow aura into different forms. She started simple circles, squares, while continuing to speak. Little by little, this power has become an inseparable part of me. Slowly, the shapes became more complex. A three-dimensional sword, a spear formed entirely from shadow. The way she controlled it. So swift, so precise. Felt almost instinctive. Your control is amazing, I commented as she put on the display. The princess smiled softly. Yes, I have it under control now, so there's no need to worry. Right? No need to worry? Truthfully, I wouldn't have worried. That level of aura manipulation proved how deeply she'd mastered it. But that glimpse I saw of the future still haunted me. Because that thing, the shadowed monstrosity that attacked Mikar, I saw it. For a fleeting second, I recognized the figure within that darkness. That creature, that nightmare that had risen from nowhere, even if she looked slightly different. It was still you, Sansa. That abomination. One more terrifying than any demon I've seen. Was that really you? Chapter 254. Shadows Beneath the Throne, 2. No matter how long I stared at her, aside from the blackness in her eyes, she still looked like herself. The same Sansa. She, along with Abraham Starlight, were the only characters I never wrote anything concrete about. And somehow, her presence was something I didn't want to lose. After deciding that, I let the topic fade, and continued chatting with Sansa like I used to in the past, ignoring the darkness that swirled quietly around her. At times like these, meaningless, light-hearted conversations were more than welcome. After all, isn't that what friends do? And just like that, we lost track of time. You've been staring a lot lately. Her voice came out of nowhere, and she turned toward me with a teasing smile. I don't know what you're talking about, I replied, deflecting with casual denial. She chuckled softly. That's unlike you, Fry. Could it be you've fallen for me? You know that's not the case. I mean, she can literally read emotions from facial expressions. So what was the point of asking? I know, she nodded. But do you know? What are you getting at? What kind of feelings do you think I have for you, Fry? She rose from the bench, eyes locked on mine. Those deep, dark eyes of hers. There was no clear answer to her question. I didn't have her ability, so all I could do was guess. I'm afraid if I say love, you'll try to kill me. You're more clueless than I thought. Sansa shook her head. I could never fall for someone who breaks his promises. A promise. I remember her bringing up something like that before. A promise made to the other Fry, the one who lived before I reincarnated. Though honestly, I wasn't even sure we were different people at all. To be honest, I forgot about that promise. So I told her the truth. Straightforward and unfiltered. She nodded, showing no reaction. I figured. Silence settled between us. We stared at each other for a while. So, I asked, aren't you going to tell me what the promise was?
No.
It doesn't matter anymore if you've forgotten it. Sansa turned to leave but glanced back at me with a faint smile. Even if you don't remember it, Fry, you've been fulfilling it perfectly all along. I guess that's just the kind of person you are. Her words stirred something in me. But if she wasn't going to tell me, I figured I'd leave it be. For now. She was the last to arrive and the first to leave. The sun had already begun to set. It's getting late. Yeah. You should head back to your room now, don't you think? I'll stay a little longer. Sansa had made up her mind to leave, as if something was forcing her to. So I didn't try to stop her. With one last look at her, I remembered how she was one of the few who stood by my side, even when others had called for my execution. Thank you, Sansa, for everything. Maybe I wouldn't have survived if not for her. So saying thank you was the least I could do. Sansa replied with a smile. No need to thank me. You saved my life, remember? So we're even then. I waved at her, and she did the same, disappearing from my view. Sansa, yeah, I definitely don't want to kill you. Slowly, the smile faded from my lips, replaced by my usual cold demeanor, as I welcomed another uninvited guest. How long do you plan to watch from over there? I didn't even bother to turn around. The blonde-haired prince clapped as he stepped forward. Impressive senses, as always, Fry. Aegon. The prince, smiling as usual, glanced first at me, then in the direction where his sister had disappeared. I see your relationship with my sister is going smoothly, he remarked with a smirk. I answered him plainly, better than my relationship with you, at least. Ouch. That hurts, you know? He feigned offense, then walked over and sat right where Sansa had been moments ago. What do you want? I asked, my patience already thin. My relationship with him had never been friendly. But Aegon was also good. Too good at hiding his true thoughts. Dealing with this royal family was one long migraine. No need to worry, Fry. You're no longer one of my priorities. Is that so? Hard to believe. Aegon wasn't the type to let a rogue piece wander around his chessboard, spreading chaos. Can't blame you. Normally, I'd just eliminate pieces like you. But you're too stubborn to die. Killing you's quite the hassle. I'll take that as a compliment, I said with a dry laugh. He chuckled as well. It was a compliment. You should be proud. I feel disgusted instead. So cruel. Aegon shrugged, then gazed up at the sky. There are plenty of eyes and hands surrounding you now, Fry. To be honest, I'm not sure if dealing with them is any better than dealing with me. You might find me charming by comparison. There was no telling what exactly he meant, or who he meant, but he wasn't wrong. Maybe that was his conclusion after failing to kill me more than once. I smiled faintly, staring at the ground. I'll figure things out. Same as always. Then keep dancing on the board however you like. For now. You seem awfully calm. If I were you, I'd be feeling some pressure right now. Sansa's not such an easy opponent anymore. I threw the jab and he only laughed. Is that what you truly think, Fry Starlight? Aegon stood up and for once, I saw his real face, his real smile. My battle with my sister ended a long time ago. What are you talking about? I asked, but Aegon was already walking away, still smiling. I've already won. It's over. Sansa destroyed herself with her own hands. His words confirmed something. He knew things others didn't. And unlike me, he didn't need a glimpse of the future to realize it. Look forward to the show that's about to start in the coming days. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. He waved goodbye and disappeared, just like his sister had. I sighed and remained seated. What kind of show? And what blood would I need to spill this time? With that thought gnawing at me, I stood and left the garden as the sky grew darker overhead. Chapter 255. A Night with the Gang. Fry Starlight's POV. Lately, fragments of old memories I thought long buried had begun resurfacing. Memories of my high school days, hanging out with friends, and the carefree moments that once defined my life. Perhaps my ongoing effort to adapt to this new reality has stirred those echoes from the past. Especially now. It was the weekend. We were allowed to leave the temple for a few days if we wished, or just stay holed up in our rooms, something I usually would have done. But not this time. Standing in front of a towering skyscraper, I stared in silence. Snow was on my right, Ghost on my left. We weren't the only ones. Danzo, Ragna, and even Dawn were with us. We're here. Come on, everyone. Danzo called out cheerfully, leading the way as we followed. We now stood at the entrance of his home, right in the heart of Belgrade's capital district. And yes, it was exactly what it looked like. A few days ago, while the elite class guys were still licking their wounds from that humiliating defeat at the hands of the girls, Danzo, realizing most of us weren't planning to leave the temple, offered to host a sleepover. Honestly, I had no real reason to accept or decline. In the past, I would have refused, arguing I didn't want to form bonds with characters from my own story. But things had changed, and so here I was. This whole building is your house? Dawn asked, visibly impressed, as he looked up at the massive structure that towered above us. Danzo replied casually, Yep, I live here with my father. We own the entire building, but we only use one floor. Amazing, Snow commented. He managed to keep a neutral expression, but I knew he was the most affected. After all, he'd spent most of his life without a home. Without thinking, I gently patted his shoulder. No need to hide it, my dear hero. I understand more than anyone. Snow seemed like he wanted to say something but chose to remain silent, as if coming to terms with something unspoken. Inside the building, which apparently was Danzo's house, we were greeted by a few sharply dressed individuals in formal black suits, each bearing the emblem of a silver dragon. I assumed it was the symbol of Danzo's father's guild. They didn't approach us once they saw Danzo among us, allowing us to proceed to the elevator without interruption. Danzo pressed the button for the 27th floor. Why the 27th floor? Snow asked. When we moved in, we just picked a random floor. Ended up on 27, so we stuck with it. That's a weird way to decide where you'll spend the rest of your life. Does it really matter, though? The elevator carried us up. Even though most of the elite class guys were here, there were some notable absences. The prince, for one. I figured Danzo wasn't quite sure how to invite someone of his status. And then there was another name missing. Where's Demon? The moment I asked, Danzo sighed with clear irritation. I did invite him, but the one thing he wanted wasn't available. And what was that? Danzo recalled what the blonde tank had asked him. He wanted to know if any girls would be coming. When I said no, he told me he wasn't interested in sleeping over with a bunch of guys. Ah! I could understand Demon's sarcasm. Despite his age, who would have guessed he was that type? Screw him. It's not like we need some brainless musclehead around anyway. Danzo grumbled. Ghost looked like he was about to say something, but I stopped him. I knew exactly what he was going to point out. No need to remind Danzo he's also a musclehead. Anyway, once we finally reached the floor, the elevator doors opened, and what we saw next was the last thing I expected to witness today. A hulking man stood in the hallway. There had to be a limit to how many muscles one body could carry, but this guy looked like he'd broken that rule and eaten bodybuilders for breakfast. His chest alone was about the size of my entire torso. But that wasn't the shocking part. It was the frilly pink kitchen apron barely clinging to his waist, and the gleaming bald head catching the light like a polished gem. Standing before us was none other than Adam Smasher, Danzo's father. "Oh, Danzo, you finally brought your friends." The infamous leader of the Silver Dragon Guild had come to welcome us himself. Just not in the way anyone expected. That apron certainly didn't suit the image of a man who led a powerful guild. But the aura surrounding him didn't lie. Not for a second. "Dad, what are you doing?" Danzo yelled at his father, who only laughed in response. "I made dinner for you all. Look at you skinny runts. Where are your muscles? Where's your manhood?" We all greeted the hulking tank of a man, but it was clear we were far too scrawny to catch his eye, especially Ghost, whom Adam smacked on the head the moment he saw him. For a brief moment, he actually thought Ghost was about to die, from the sheer lack of muscle and how thin his body was. Danzo was the only one who barely met the standards of his muscle-obsessed father. Eventually, Danzo shoved him aside, trying to get rid of him. Adam Smasher kept laughing until the end. He genuinely looked happy seeing his son bring home this many people. Weird as he was, there was no denying it. He truly loved his son. "Sorry about that, guys. Let's head to my room. It's just through that door over." Danzo turned to gesture at the room behind him, only to find me already standing in the doorway. I'd opened it without thinking, and now everyone was staring. "What?" I instantly realized my mistake and scrambled to cover it. "Sorry for opening the door. I just had a feeling it was your room." Of course, that was a lie. I already knew the layout of this place from using the third-person POV on Danzo before. They didn't know that, though. I had to be more careful moving forward. Luckily, no one suspected anything, and we entered the room without issue. "Your dad's amazing," Dawn commented. "I never thought I'd see the legendary Adam Smasher wearing a kitchen apron." "He does this from time to time," Danzo replied. "Especially since Mom passed away. It's just the two of us now." "Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to bring up a bad memory. It's fine. It happened a long time ago. Doesn't really matter anymore." Danzo smiled and quickly changed the subject. Still, what he said gave me a new insight into his character. His mother had passed away. My respect for Adam Smasher rose unconsciously in that moment. What a father. The night was just beginning, and we hadn't even started yet. But somehow, after Danzo mentioned his mother, the conversation naturally drifted toward deeper topics. There was a lot we didn't know about each other, after all. Plenty to talk about, plenty to do. Time flew by, and to my surprise, I found myself genuinely enjoying the sleepover. They might be fierce warriors, but they were still just teenagers barely 18. Guys their age were bound to enjoy themselves and forget the weight life had thrown on their backs. Me, on the other hand, I was an old man in a young body. I was worried I wouldn't be able to fit in. But thankfully, that fear faded quickly. Turns out there was still a kid somewhere deep inside me. And moments like these helped me forget, if only for a while, the looming problem I had to solve within the next 20 days. Surrounded by friends, I felt like I just started living. Chapter 256. A Smile in the Dark. Far from Belgrade's city center, where Fry currently was, inside the silent temple, where only street lamps lit the vacant roads past midnight. Within the elite dormitory, a young maid walked quietly through the corridors where the students slept. She gently opened one of the doors to check on the person she was assigned to care for. But the bed was empty. "My lady," she called out, scanning the room. The place was dark, so she instinctively reached for the light switch, but nothing happened. It was as if a cocoon of darkness had swallowed every source of light. My lady, where are you? She asked again, forming a blade of wind aura in her left hand, hidden behind her back. Eyes wary, she surveyed the surroundings, ready for anything. But then a chilling laugh echoed through the room. The sound didn't come from one place, came from everywhere, all at once. It wasn't the gentle voice of the princess she was used to serving. It was the laugh of a wicked witch. That was the terrifying part. The way it resonated from every corner of the darkness around her. As if dozens of voices were laughing in unison. The maid tensed, completely thrown off by the eerie situation. My lady, please, come back to your senses. The maid pleaded with her lady, and the reply came swiftly, whispered right beside her ear. Why? Every hair on the maid's body stood on end as the battle-hardened servant lashed out toward the voice, only to slice through empty air. Wrong. Try again. Over here. Here. In her growing panic, the maid didn't realize how completely the darkness had enveloped the room. Every source of light had been smothered. She began to feel something circling her, the sound of the princess's voice echoing from all directions. No matter where she turned, she couldn't find her. A suffocating pressure squeezed her chest, fear and confusion wrapping around her like chains. Instinct drove her to flee, but it was too late. She was already surrounded. Then, without warning, the princess screamed. Time's up, like a game ending, or a turn coming to a close. The maid hadn't found the princess, and now it was the princess's turn to find her. With a playful tone, Sansa's voice echoed through the darkness. My turn. In an instant, the maid's eyes widened. Something brushed her heart in a flash of unnatural sensation. She glanced down and saw nothing, but she felt it. Dozens of jagged, spear-like tendrils erupted from the void and pierced her body, her blood mixing with the shadow, forming a formless, colorless sludge that dissolved into the darkness. She died instantly, still standing. And the princess? She had been standing right in front of her the whole time, wearing her nightdress, a wide smile stretched across her face. Though in that abyssal darkness no one could see it. But one victim wasn't enough. She wanted more. Needed more. Fortunately, the elite dormitory was full of people to play with. She was just about to move, when something tore through the darkness and sent her flying backward. He appeared like a ghost. His crimson eyes scanned the maid's lifeless body, then flicked to the princess. There was no way to read his expression beneath that mask, but his eyes said enough. He clenched his daggers and cursed under his breath. Why did it have to be now of all times? Why did she lose control, only when he wasn't there to stop it? Come play with me, Sansa giggled, her presence vanishing as her voice danced through the shadows. But Oliver Kahn stood firm, eyes tracking something darting through the black. Come back to your senses, Sansa. This isn't you. He paused, then corrected himself, adjusting his stance. Actually, it's best if you don't. You're not ready to bear the weight of taking a life. No sooner had he spoken than the same sharp tendrils of shadow surged toward him. But he was already gone, vanishing, only to reappear behind the princess. With a clean swing, he tried to end it right then, but her hardened shadows blocked his blade completely. He attacked again. So did the shadows. Sansa darted like a demon through her veil of black, and they clashed in bursts of speed. Her projectiles were fast, faster than most could react, but they never touched him. And Oliver couldn't break through her ironclad defense. She's gotten stronger. He analyzed the fight coldly. Though he wasn't going all out, it didn't change the truth. Sansa had just fended off a fully awakened SS-ranked opponent. An impossible feat under normal circumstances. But it was happening now. Those cursed black tendrils closed in, joined by dozens of thorn spikes meant to kill him, just as they had the maid. Oliver crossed his daggers, his crimson eyes flashing. Aura surged violently around him, and in an instant he moved faster than the eye could follow. His arms danced like serpents, weaving dozens of explosive blue lines through the air. One strike. Faster than lightning, ripped the darkness apart, carving through the veil of shadow and dragging the terrified princess out of her lair. His dagger left a deep red gash across her chest, and she collapsed unconscious into his arms. Oliver gritted his teeth, holding Sansa's limp body close, the same girl he had just struck down. With the darkness gone, the light returned, revealing the catastrophic destruction left in their wake. Sansa's shadows had cloaked everything, silent, suffocating, absolute. But when the light returned, the truth was laid bare. The place was devastated. The wound Oliver had carved into Sansa's chest slowly faded, vanishing completely without even leaving a scar. He had made sure not to strike too deep. But that kind of recovery, instantaneous, flawless, was not something a human should be capable of. And yet, that wasn't the real problem. The true issue was that someone had died tonight. "You've crossed the line, Oliver Kahn." A third voice spoke from the darkness, though Oliver had sensed his presence long before. "I know," he replied simply, still holding Sansa in his arms. Behind him stood the head of the temple, Ivar Valyrian. He had witnessed everything. "Her powers are beyond control," Ivar said coldly. Oliver's reply came firm and immediate. "It's too early to say that."
No.
"It's not. Look beneath your feet at the blood. Look at the maid's corpse lying in front of you. Isn't that enough?" A long silence followed. Then Ivar sighed. "You know what must be done." Oliver remained stubborn. He always was when it came to Sansa. But this wasn't a decision he could make alone. He nodded. "I know." His gaze dropped to the unconscious girl in his arms. "There's no place left for her in this temple anymore." Chapter 257. A Quiet Night 1. Fry Starlight's POV. It was past midnight. Darkness blanketed the city, and most sane people had already gone to sleep. Among them was Adam Smasher, who'd turned in early after preparing a high-calorie dinner packed with supplements, clearly designed to maintain that monstrous physique of his. As for us, we barely managed to eat half of what he served. Feeling full to the brim, we wandered around with the rest of the guys, exploring the upper floors of this massive tower. Another residential area. We were now on the 34th floor, which was an identical replica of the 27th. So far, this skyscraper featured dozens of residential floors with rooms styled like luxury hotels. Some floors were fully equipped training halls or diverse combat arenas. Occasionally, we'd stumble upon game rooms or even a massive pool at the very top. The whole place felt more like a high-end resort than a home. "Man, your place could fit the entire temple inside," Don muttered, holding his head in disbelief. Just one floor of this place could probably eclipse his entire home. "It's impressive, I'll give you that. As expected from the Silver Dragon Guild," said Ragna, who didn't seem that surprised. Understandable, considering his father led a guild as influential as Danzo's family's. "The lives of the rich really are something else." The moment the word rich was uttered, most of them turned toward me. "Speaking of rich, we've got the direct heir of House Starlight with us. I wonder what his place looks like." Thinking back to the mansion I'd stayed in for a while, it was definitely luxurious, but I barely lived there. The Shadow Sect and the temple felt more like home than that place ever did. "Don't get your hopes up. My house is pretty average compared to this." Even though I said that, it didn't seem like they bought it. "Bullshit. Did House Starlight go bankrupt and we just didn't hear about it?" Danzo asked as I shrugged with a smile. "I wouldn't know. I've always been the unwanted child, so I never got the best of things." The moment I said that, they all gathered around me, intrigued. "What's up, Fry? Since you brought it up, I've heard a lot of rumors about you," Danzo said, stepping closer now that he no longer held back his curiosity. "What kind of rumors?" "Stuff like torturing maids," Danzo started. "Or molesting underage girls," Ragna continued. "I heard you assaulted a mother in front of her son. Even Dawn. What kind of nonsense is this rumor?" The only ones who stayed quiet were Snow and Ghost, simply watching. I face-bombed, wondering just how vile a reputation I had. Where the hell do these damn rumors come from? Don't get us wrong, Fry. We know you're not actual trash. But as they say, no smoke without fire, Dawn pointed out. He wasn't completely wrong, considering I'd only taken control of this body recently. My story isn't as exciting as you think, I replied calmly. Like hell it isn't. You still haven't told us what really happened in the Nightmare Lands, Danzo said, fired up. Or the truth behind your strength, added Ragna. As they kept throwing in mention after mention of the feats I'd achieved, I realized how much I'd really done in just 2 years. In the end, I gave in to their pressure and started telling them everything about my life. Sitting at the top of the tower, I felt like some old man surrounded by kids, telling them a fantasy tale, my tale, a story of survival. And to be honest, my story could probably make a great movie. One I'd actually enjoy watching myself. Took me 4 full hours to share everything. I omitted details about the system and the mechanics behind it, of course, but I told them about the Shadow Sect and the horrors I'd faced. At first, I recounted it all with indifference. But as I went on, it felt like a heavy weight was slowly being lifted off my chest. When I finally finished, there was no applause, just a long, heavy silence. That's it, guys. No sequels. I'm barely 18. Come back in a few years, maybe I'll have more. I joked, and Snow was the first to laugh. That was one hell of a story. Yeah, I feel bad for ever calling you a sissy, Ragna said. Same. I was hoping to impress you with my own story, but compared to yours, mine sounds like child's play, Dawn added. But where is the part about assault? It seems to me you left out some important passages, Fry. Danzo slapped my back, trying to pry something out of me. Not that I was hiding anything, it's just that I didn't actually know what the original Fry did. The memories I inherited were incomplete. It's been 4 hours already. What more do you want? My throat's gone dry. That's suspicious, Danzo muttered, though he let it slide. Thinking about it, I really do wonder if this body is still a virgin. Who knows what the old Fry did with it? Speaking of girls, we're surrounded by beauty from every angle. I can't help but wonder if any of you have certain thoughts, if you know what I mean. Danzo laughed slyly, but everyone immediately denied it. Come on, don't be like that. What are you, gays? Or maybe someone here's actually into guys. He turned toward Snow, who simply shook his head. We're all born with a primal instinct toward the opposite sex. But the environment we live in doesn't allow us to act on it. There's too much at stake. A textbook answer from the prophesied hero. Well done, Snow. He really had dedicated himself to his mission, but Danzo didn't seem satisfied with the answer. Bullshit. You say that while Lara Croft's been glued to your ass this whole time. That's true. I heard you get love confessions constantly, from both inside and outside the temple, Ragna added. With that face of his, the church's hero was bound to gain too much attention. How about this? We each name the girl we think is most attractive in the temple, just to see where everyone stands. Talking about women was bound to happen among men no matter the time or place. Are we seriously going to rate the girls like they're products on a shelf? Dawn asked. What's wrong with that? I'm sure they do the same with us, Danzo replied. I wonder about that. Anyway, let's start. You first, princess. Danzo went straight for Snow. Felt like we were about to do something stupid at 4 in the morning. After a bit of pressure, Snow sighed and finally gave his answer. Saris. What? Seriously? Everyone was shocked. Saris was a reasonable choice, sure. She was beautiful. But maybe they expected something more unique from the church's golden boy. You're more normal than I thought. I just answered your question, Snow muttered, clearly not interested in pushing the conversation further. Maybe he picked her at random since she's the most well-known. Ironically, in the original draft I wrote, he does end up with her. Then the others followed with their picks. Dawn also said Saris. Her beauty's undeniable. But I'm more curious about what lies beneath that icy mask she wears all the time. Ragna went with Clanna Starlight, surprisingly enough, saying he found her attractive. Danzo shocked us all by choosing Selena, the witch he always bickered with. It's worth noting that Ghost had vanished ever since I finished telling my story. I assumed he went to bed, so we didn't get a word from the silent assassin tonight. Now all eyes were on me. Chapter 258. A Quiet Night 2. Fry Starlight POV. This is stupid, guys. No matter what I say, it won't mean anything. I'm not in love with any of them. Stop dodging and spit it out already, Danzo pushed. After a moment of thought, I finally gave them what they wanted. Whatever happens, happens. If we're talking about personality, the princess is the one I feel most comfortable with. But if we're talking about my personal preferences in terms of looks and body, then I'd choose Uriel Platini. The first had the personality most compatible with mine. The second had the mature, full figure that topped them all. A very detailed answer. Older women, huh? Fry, you really are something. Uriel was 5 years older than us, so their reactions were only natural. You're the ones who wanted an answer. Deal with it. Very on-brand, Fry. Nothing about you is ever normal. But Uriel, you've got good taste. That chest of hers is a dangerous weapon. After some more shameless banter, everyone eventually passed out. By the time it hit 5 in the morning, they were all asleep. Lying awake, I was the only one left sitting at the top of the tower, watching the sunrise in the distance, completely unable to sleep. This damn insomnia. My thoughts wandered back to everything that had happened, and what awaited me once I returned to the temple. I was still trying to adapt to this new life. I'd already taken some major steps forward, but I couldn't help wondering, where would it all lead? The overthinking kept me up. Insomnia gnawed at me as I sat alone, welcoming the first rays of the morning sun. What's got you up this late? Apparently, I wasn't the only one. Snow appeared behind me, hands in his pockets. You couldn't sleep either? Yeah, sleeping's become a real challenge lately. We both sat in silence, gazing at the horizon. The height of the tower offered us a breathtaking view of the vast capital, Belgrade. So, what's on your mind? I asked. A lot of things, mostly the weight of the responsibility that's been put on me lately. To be the hero of the empire, placed on the same level as the first emperor Casus Valerian, it was a burden only a few could understand. What about you? I responded with a light smile. My problems seem small compared to yours. Let's just say I'm trying to find a reason to keep living. He chuckled too. Never figured you were the type to have an existential crisis. I'm only 18, just a kid really, but I've lived a bad life, I replied. We all make mistakes, but you're a good guy, Fry. Heh, I'm not sure you really know me then. I think I do. I turned toward Snow after hearing those words. It might sound strange, but I feel like I understand you. I've felt that way ever since our fight at the Victoriad Finals. I was honestly surprised to hear him say that. I didn't think he'd sensed it too, even if vaguely. The fact that we were two sides of the same coin, except he was the superior version. We both gave it everything we had in that battle. Our swords had spoken more truth than anything else. After mimicking Snow through shadow adaptation, I saw the world through his eyes, and somehow he saw it through mine. I smiled wider and lowered my head, gazing at the vast space below us. It was a good fight, except you didn't go all out. I said it calmly, and Snow's golden eyes widened. No point in denying it. You said it yourself. We already know plenty about each other. He went quiet for a moment, his gaze shifting before he nodded slowly. It's not like I held back on purpose. I know. I still can't control that power. You will. Eventually. You're way too understanding. Snow laughed and I joined him. I already knew about his true form. His king of war state, his strongest form. That was the peak of Snow's power, and he didn't use it against me in the finals. If he had, I wouldn't have been able to defeat him. But it seems he had his reasons for holding back. So I didn't judge him. Just like how he didn't judge me for the innocent blood I spilled that day. I doubt we're falling asleep anytime soon. What do you say? Want to fight until we both pass out? He suggested. That's a masochistic way to knock yourself out, man. But sure, I'm in. Snow leapt back, and with a wave of his hand, summoned Vermithor, the sacred sword. Meanwhile, Balerion extended from my hand as if responding to the call. This whole place is basically a training ground, so we can cut loose a little. Just don't go overboard, Snow said as he stretched his limbs to warm up. Relax. I'm not the type to destroy other people's property. A violet aura surged around me as I raised my blade and pointed it at him. But make no mistake, Snow. I smiled. Even with that hidden power of yours, you won't beat me. Snow chuckled as he heard that. I guess I'm not the only one keeping secrets. After that, neither of us said another word. The only sound echoing from the top of the Silver Dragon Guild Tower that morning was the clash of swords, steel, and surging auras. In the end, we both collapsed on the cold floor and fell asleep. Right there, side by side, after hours of sparring. The sun had risen high, and the clock struck 8. Off to the side, a towering man, well over 2 meters tall, watched in silence. He had been the first to sleep and the first to rise. Atom Smasher. He gave a nod of approval after witnessing the intensity of the duel. The leader of the Silver Dragon Guild had never imagined he'd live to see teenagers, barely 18, fighting on par with his own level at that age. The son of Abraham, and the hero of this era. With those words, Atom Smasher turned and vanished, leaving us passed out on the floor of his home. My son still has a long road ahead of him, if he ever wants to stand among them. This generation might just be the strongest in the last 3 centuries. Time slipped by. In the end, Snow and I returned to the temple draped in lingering shadows, having barely caught 2 hours of sleep before the others shook us awake. What the hell were you two doing? You look like the Walking Dead. The sleepover had ended as quickly as it began. And just like that, we were back at the temple. All I wanted was to collapse into bed and finally sleep. But even that had become a luxury, because the first thing that greeted me upon my return was the news that the princess had withdrawn from the temple. I smacked my forehead and swore under my breath. I was gone for 1 day, and this is what I come back to? The target of my mission had vanished, slipped right through my fingers while I wasn't even around. Damn it! Another curse escaped me. I had seriously underestimated things this time. Now I had to reach the princess, under Mikar's nose himself. Spare me this nonsense. All I wanted was just a few hours of sleep. Chapter 259, 15 Days of Darkness. Fry Starlight's POV. By the time I returned to temple grounds, Sansa was already gone. Her withdrawal carried heavy consequences, especially given her noble status. The instructors claimed it was only temporary, that she'd return eventually. But anyone with half a brain could see the lies in their words. They didn't even bother to explain why she left. Something happened the night I was gone. Before I realized it, my fist had clenched tight enough to nearly crack the desk in front of me. Seated in class, my eyes drifted to her empty seat. Maybe, if I had taken the mission seriously from the start, if I'd declined that sleepover, maybe I could have prevented all of this. Main mission: eliminate the darkness of the Imperial family, 18 days remaining. What now? Should I head to her family's estate? There's no way they'd let me see her. Even imagining a way past their defenses was a stretch. Their guard would be at full alert. I cursed under my breath, trying to think. I was sure the me from before the Victoriad wouldn't have stumbled into a mess like this. Lost in thought, I was snapped back to reality when something slammed into my desk. Fry Starlight, am I boring you so much that your mind has to wander this far? Ah, apologies, Miss Sophia. Focus. You never know. Even these dull lectures might just save your life one day. Of course. I smiled politely, hoping she'd just move along. As attractive as Sophia was, she could be a pain, and her lessons were only useful for wave controllers anyway. Once she walked off, I returned to what mattered. If I wanted answers, I needed to investigate. And that meant heading to the scene of the incident. Sansa's room. Midnight. As the night settled in, I stood facing the left wall of my room. The elite dorms were fully equipped. Private kitchen, bath, even a small training area. What mattered most now was that our rooms were directly connected. I was ranked first in our class. She was second, which meant her room was right next to mine. This wall was the only thing between us. If there was any place to find clues, this was it. With Balerion in hand, I quietly pierced the wall, just enough to create a small passage into her room. The temple's walls were built to endure just about anything, but not Balerion. Breaking into a girl's room wasn't ideal, but I had no other choice. I stepped through, expecting little, but what I found left me speechless. Where am I? I asked the words aloud without thinking. This wasn't an elite dorm room anymore. The space was swallowed in darkness, dense with an eerie power that devoured all light. The room was far too large, at least 4 times the size of a normal one. That shouldn't have been possible. The air was thick with destruction. Debris littered the ground. Bloodstains splattered across the walls and floor. The remnants of dark aura still lingered like a haunting echo. From the outside, it looks normal, but in here, some kind of spatial distortion, a manipulation of dimension. Whatever it was, it painted a clear picture. A battle took place here. What truly shocked me was that Sansa's shadows still remained. They hadn't faded. Of course, they were hers. I approached one of the floating tendrils, slowly reaching for it as a veil of black aura formed around my hand. Since reaching the first stage of shadow adaptation, I'd gained access to its superior properties. For now, I could only merge my shadow into my body to amplify my strength and aura. But even so, I should be able to exert some control over any nearby shadow. I reached out. The shadows reacted instantly. They lashed at me like serpents, and if it weren't for Balerion still fused to my arm, I might have been impaled. Shadows that move on their own, like a creature with its own will. Think, Fry. There was too much blood here. Sansa attacked someone, and the fight was one-sided. Judging from the blood, she seriously injured them, maybe even killed them. But the claw marks and damage to the ground said otherwise. Whoever she fought wasn't weak. They fought back hard. Someone else intervened and ended it. Someone powerful. The blurry image in my mind was starting to come into focus. Sansa had lost control and done something unforgivable. And the temple had no choice but to send her away. I crouched in the middle of the room, a space that felt cut off from the world, trying to figure out how to deal with this mess. Useless. I sighed, giving in to the frustration, and pulled up the system interface. Time to cheat again. Random advice, 500 achievement points. Direct advice, 1,000 achievement points. The prices had jumped ridiculously, making me hesitate. Random advice offered the safest route, but always in the form of a cryptic riddle I could never fully decipher. Direct advice were blunt and clear, but they always came with a brutal challenge I'd be forced to face afterward. Honestly, I never understood any of the riddles anyway. So this time I chose the direct advice. All right, let's do it. How do I deal with the darkness of the royal family? The system glowed the moment I submitted the question. Meet the princess 14 times over the course of 14 mornings. On the 15th night, go to her. There you'll find your answer. I stared blankly at the screen, resisting the urge to slam my fist through it. Yes, the instructions were clear, but the real issue was still the same. I was struggling just to meet her once. Now I had to somehow sneak in 15 times? They really want me to infiltrate the emperor's estate, the most secure place in the entire empire. I ran a hand through my hair, then stood up. No other choice. Come to think of it, the Ultras had pulled it off once. They even managed to kidnap the princess. So why couldn't I? I was doing this, no matter what. Chapter 260. The Moon Palace Infiltration. Once I made up my mind, I spent the day at the temple planning everything and informing people about my planned absence to avoid raising suspicion. I was dead serious about breaking into the emperor's home tonight. And no, it wasn't a joke. The imperial fortress stood in the northern part of the capital, Belgrade. To get there faster, I used one of the teleportation gates connecting the temple and the city. Wearing plain black clothes, I moved through the capital's early morning streets, infiltrating the emperor's estate at dawn. I was definitely losing my mind, but I had no other options. The capital was vast and advanced, far more so than anywhere else I'd been. It took nearly an hour to reach the Valyrian family's private sector. From a hilltop, I finally saw it, the view I'd once written about myself. The wonder of House Valyrian. Unlike other noble territories, the Crownlands were home to towering castles that looked like they belonged to another era. Among them stood 3 particularly grand palaces, one to the west, one to the east, and one to the north. But the real spectacle was the climate. The western palace was buried in snow year-round, locked in an eternal winter. The eastern one basked under scorching heat, like summer never ended. And the northern one? Calm and temperate, despite being just a few hundred meters apart. They said the land had been this way for centuries, ever since a battle between monstrous awakened scarred the earth so deeply, the effects never faded. My destination was the snow-covered Western Palace. Moon Palace, Sansa's residence. All I could do was pray I wouldn't be struck down the moment I got close. Moving quickly, I approached the front gates. The place looked more like a military base than a residence. No one was even allowed near it. Standing before the massive gates were 2 towering guards radiating raw, explosive aura. If these were just the gatekeepers, it was clear how overwhelming the Valyrians really were. And here I was knocking on their front door. It reminded me of the vision I'd seen of my father storming House Starlight. The only difference was that I didn't have the power to stand before giants like Mikar. As I got closer, one of the guards flared his aura, an instant warning. "Turn back, boy. You're trespassing on royal grounds." And this wasn't even the inner courtyard. I raised my hands in surrender and gave a sheepish grin. "My apologies. I'm Fry Starlight, a friend of the princess." I spoke confidently as the guards exchanged looks at my words. The princess withdrew from the temple without any warning, so I came to check on her. As her friend, I mean no harm. I was gambling on my status as a young lord of a noble house carrying some weight. But of course, turn back. Even if you're the young lord of House Starlight, this is the Emperor's land. Your status means nothing here. Stubborn to the core. Are you sure about that? What do you think the princess will say when she finds out you kicked her only friend off her doorstep? I tried every approach I could think of, but nothing worked. And worse, this was the only path I could take. The royal estate was protected by a celestial dome similar to the one above the temple. That gate was my only way in. I hoped that a more assertive tone might make them reconsider, but all I got in return were their raised spears. "One last warning. Turn around yourself or we'll make you. The choice is yours." I'd hit a wall with these damn guards. They weren't budging, no matter what I said. "No other way, huh?" I sighed, annoyed. Then the air around us shifted. "Come, Valyrian." Some people only understand the language of force. The 2 guards were probably A+ rank. Strong for gatekeepers, sure. But that didn't mean much to me. With a single step, I was already between them. What they? A teenager not even half their age brushing past them like it was nothing. It was enough to make them realize how serious this was. One instantly cloaked his spear in flames. The other conjured light. They both thrust at me, but only hit the afterimage I left behind after leaping into the air. With a single dark slash, I unleashed a wave of aura that engulfed them both, knocking them out cold. I made sure to hit them hard enough to knock them unconscious and save myself the time. The moment they fell, I dashed inside at full speed, summoning the Dark Sister to boost my aura and push my speed to insane levels. Like a shadow, I passed unseen through the royal grounds, one building after the next. No one even noticed me. I wished it would stay that way, especially as I reached the snow-covered palace ahead. I have to see her today. The system's advice demanded I meet the princess for 15 days in a row. If I failed today, I wouldn't have enough days left to complete it. I prayed my full strength would be enough. Snow flew past me as I surged forward, wrapped in black light. But the deeper I went, the stronger that suffocating pressure became. I could feel eyes watching me from the shadows, many of them, not one or two, but so many powerful presences that it genuinely made my skin crawl. But for some reason, none of them attacked. And that let me keep moving forward. There was no turning back now. After piercing through the final stretch, it finally came into view. Moon Palace, blanketed in eternal snow. It towered ominously before me, radiating such a sinister aura that I instinctively wanted to retreat. But that place was my target. With one leap, I launched myself toward one of the open windows up high, successfully infiltrating Moon Palace. The place I had only seen through the old phrase memories. Here I was, stepping inside with my own feet. As soon as I entered, I dismissed Dark Sister and was about to do the same with Balerion. My goal had been achieved, after all. The palace was silent, desolate, as if everyone had abandoned it. I took a step into the dim hallway and froze. Cold sweat trickled down my spine. Every hair on my body stood on end. Killing intent, so dense and heavy, it nearly crushed me on the spot. It was like thousands of worms crawling across my skin, threatening to devour me whole. I couldn't move, not even a twitch. You might be just a brat barely out of childhood, but you've got some sense. Most rookies would have lunged at him on sight, unable to even sense or comprehend the murderous aura pressing down on them. With half a smile, still paralyzed, I slowly responded, my eyes shifting to the corner of my left vision. Of course, I'm not exactly eager to die today. Only an idiot would pick a fight with the Grand Warden himself, Oliver Kahn. He drew his daggers, the blades glowing faintly in the gloom of the empty palace. Unfortunately, you are going to die. Right here. Right now. Clang. Steel clashed in a flash. I barely managed to intercept his strike with Balerion, but the impact alone sent me flying across the hallway and slamming into a wall. Just one strike, and he wasn't even serious. But my arm felt like it had been shattered. Shit. I'd really found myself the worst possible opponent. Now I understood why none of the other strong auras had moved earlier. They didn't have to, because he was here, and Oliver Kahn was more than enough to handle any intruder. His crimson eyes gleamed at me in the dark, and I knew he wouldn't be holding back anymore.